Good morning. Recognizing a quorum, I am calling this meeting of the Cannabis Control Commission to order at 10 a.m. on January 14th, 2021. This meeting is being recorded. Let me start by wishing a happy and healthy new year to everybody on the call. It's been a while, so before we get into the agenda, I have a few comments to make. A lot has happened since our last meeting, so let me make some comments addressing those. Start, most importantly, by welcoming our new commissioners. So I believe I was muted, so I'm going to start this meeting again if I could. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let me start by saying good morning. Recognizing a quorum, I am calling this meeting of the Cannabis Control Commission to order at 10:02 a.m. on January 14th, 2021. This meeting is being recorded. Let me start by wishing a happy and healthy new year to everybody on the call. Hope 2021 is a little better than 2020. It's been a while since we've had one of these meetings. Hopefully I haven't forgotten how to do it. And a lot has happened since our last meeting that requires some comment. So let me start first of all by welcoming our new commissioners, Commissioner Nerys Camargo, Commissioner Eva Concepcion, Commissioner Bruce Stebbins. First of all, it's nice to have a full complement of commissioners again. I am delighted to have them on board. I'm looking forward to working with them and collaborating with them, and I'm very confident that they will make significant contributions to the Commission in our continuing effort to build out an industry that works for all the citizens of the Commonwealth and that meets all the mandates of our enabling legislation. I want to thank the appointing authorities for the time and the careful consideration they gave to these nominations, and I think the outcome is that we have 3 great additions to our team. So thank you for that. With respect to Commissioners Camargo and Stebbins, they've been with us for almost 2 weeks. They've been through a thorough onboarding process and have had about a week to review the materials for today's meeting and to ask follow-up questions to our staff. They will be full participants in today's meeting. With respect to Commissioner Concepcion, there obviously has not been enough time, given that her appointment was made on, I think, Tuesday, and she was sworn in on Wednesday. There hasn't been enough time to do the same onboarding process. In that light, Commissioner Concepcion has decided to participate in today's meeting as an observer. She will not vote on the matters before the Commission today, but will obviously be a full participant in our next meeting in February. I'd like to recognize and thank the Senate and the House for restoring our full operational funding for the current fiscal year. We appreciate the support and the confidence this shows in our Commission. We will continue to use taxpayer money judiciously and carefully as we continue our mission to honor the will of the voters of the state. Finally, since we never got a chance to say goodbye publicly to Commissioner Title, I want to take this opportunity to thank her for her substantial contributions to the full body of the work of the Commission, certainly including but not limited to our efforts to stand up a fair, equitable, and diverse industry. I greatly admired her passion and commitment. I wish her the best in her future endeavors, and I'm sure she'll bring the same passion and commitment to whatever she does next. Thank you very much, Commissioner Title. Before I get into the agenda, let me ask my fellow commissioners if they'd like to make some opening comments. Commissioner Camargo, you had mentioned that you would like to say something.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. Can you see me?
I can see you as well.
Okay, good. Well, first of all, thank you, Chairman. One, for your support throughout this onboarding. It's been a crash course, but I think we're ready for today. I also want to thank our Executive Director, Sean Collins, and his amazing staff. before coming to the commission, not knowing the operations of the commission, I am just so impressed by staff and by Sean, the amount of work, passion, and commitment that they put to creating this commission. So kudos to them. As you mentioned, just briefly, want to thank Commissioner Flanagan as well for her support on onboarding, but also the former commissioners, Doyle and Title and McBride, for all their work that they've done to get us, to this point. So I'm really grateful for that. For me, as a community organizer, nonprofit leader, with experience both in the public and private sector, I'm really excited and looking forward to listening and learning and really meeting the constituents throughout the state of Massachusetts. I also want to thank the appointing authorities, Governor Baker, State Treasurer Goldberg, and our Attorney General Maura Healey for the appointment. I am excited. It is an honor and a privilege to serve here with you all, and I'm just looking forward to focusing on the priorities of the commission to create more equitable policies for this industry. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Camargo. And again, welcome on board. It's great to have you here. Commissioner Stebbins or Commissioner Flanagan, any comments you'd like to make before we get into the agenda?
Mr. Chair, if I could.
So go ahead, Commissioner.
I could easily say ditto to Commissioner Camargo's comments. I really do want to thank you and Commissioner Flanagan, as well as Executive Director Collins and the incredible team that's been assembled at the Commission. For the onboarding last week, it kind of felt like college finals week, but we got through it, and have just been incredibly impressed with the staff, their passion for the work, and as Commissioner Camargo said, thanks to our appointing authorities for this honor and opportunity to serve the Commonwealth, and looking forward to learning a lot more about this industry and in our licensees as we go along. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins, and again, welcome. Commissioner Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to welcome the new commissioners, Commissioner Camargo, Commissioner Stebbins, Commissioner Concepcion, because I think that it's really important that they get the recognition that they deserve for having been appointed as, commissioners to one of the most unique agencies we have in the Commonwealth. And I think that the work ahead of them certainly will be interesting for them, but I really appreciate their efforts and really stepping up and offering to take these positions. Certainly with Commissioner Camargo and Commissioner Stebbins, they've had a whirlwind couple of weeks with their onboarding, but I think that, they've fit in perfectly, and I appreciate the work that they've put into this. And I'm looking forward to meeting Commissioner Concepcion and to really welcoming her and helping her get acclimated to the commission as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Flanagan. So let's get into the agenda. We're through the chairman's comments and update section. There are two sets of minutes for approval. Our August 17th, 2020 public meeting with the Cannabis Advisory Board, and our August 28th meeting that was focused on regulatory policy discussions. It's a little unique given that we have two new commissioners, but we do need to approve the minutes. I want to thank Commissioners Stebbins and Camargo for diving into the recordings of these two meetings and being willing to consider approving the minutes based upon the best of their knowledge about what happened at those meetings. So thank you very much for the homework and research that you did, Commissioner Stebbins and Commissioner Camargo, when we get into minutes. Standard Executive Director's report with an update on where we are on the licensing front, as well as where we are with respect to rollout and implementation of the new set of regulations that we worked on for most of last year. So Sean will get into that, and then we'll get into the main part of the agenda with respect to licenses. We have, if my count is correct, and I'm sure Kyle will correct me if I'm wrong, we have 12 changes of ownership, 3 changes of location, 68 renewals, 25 final licenses, which I believe is the largest number we've ever processed at one meeting, and 24 provisional licenses. There are 2 topics for commission discussion and vote, one being a revisit of the goals for the executive director that we discussed at our last meeting and agreed to make some revisions to, as well as nominating and voting on a secretary and a treasurer for the commission. Finally, there is one business item that I was not aware of at the time of the posting, the public posting this agenda, that we will get into, and then we'll go through not only the next meeting date, but also a prospective calendar for the remainder of the calendar year with respect to commission meetings. So full agenda, my expectation is that we won't need to take a lunch break. We hopefully can get our business done by somewhere between noon and 1 o'clock. We will take a break sometime mid-morning, but I request if any of my fellow commissioners wants to take a break at any time, just raise your hand and let me know. We'll get into that. With that being said, let's get into the agenda. And as I mentioned, the first item of business is the approval of the minutes for our two previous meetings, starting with our public meeting with the Cannabis Advisory Board on August 17th. May I ask my fellow commissioners, if you had an opportunity to review these minutes, do you have any questions, comments, or suggested edits to these minutes? Okay. Then I would like to ask for a motion, please, to approve these minutes as being to the best of each individual's knowledge and accurate representation of the meeting on August 17th, 2020. Can I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Yay.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the minutes from our August 17th, 2020 meeting as being to the best of each individual's knowledge and accurate representation of the meeting on August 17th, 2020. Thank you. Let me next ask if the commissioners have had an opportunity to review the minutes for our meeting on August 28th, 2020, and are there any questions or suggested edits to these minutes? Okay, thank you. Then could I ask please for a motion to approve these minutes as being to the best of each individual's knowledge and accurate representation of the meeting on August 28th, 2020? Can I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Flanagan. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
That's Commissioner Camargo.
Yes.
Thank you. So let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Yay. Yes.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approved the minutes from our meeting on August 28th, 2020 as being to the best of each individual's knowledge and accurate representation of the meeting on August 28th, 2020. Thank you. Mr. Executive Director, and thank you for Christopher Smith from our legal team for doing such a yeoman-like job of keeping track of the minutes and compiling them. Really appreciate that. I know it's really hard work given how much we cover during these meetings. So thank you, Christopher. Mr. Executive Director, are you ready for your report?
I am.
Welcome. Happy New Year. Look to see what we've done over the last couple of months from a license standpoint. So please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to the new commissioners, and looking forward to working with you as well and getting you up to speed as quickly as possible. So I'll begin with a highlight of our licensing data from our various licensing portals. This is really a very high level overview, and then the subsequent slides will get into some more of the granular detail. But you'll see here that there are currently 11 applications awaiting their first review. That is the first time that anyone at the agency will look at these applications. They have submitted all relevant sections or portions of the application and would therefore be deemed, the next step would be either to be reviewed for a incomplete or what is necessary to finish the application, or actually deemed complete and thus commencing that 90-day statutory clock for us to recommend in the commission to consider the application. With that in mind, there are 24 applications before you today that have been reviewed by staff and have been deemed complete. And our review, as far as a staff level overview, has been conducted and therefore is awaiting a recommendation, or has a recommendation is awaiting your consideration today. There are 31 applications awaiting a third-party response. For context, a third-party response is either to the city or town in which the entity intends to be located. We do ask that city or town to confirm that the applicant is compliant with all local zoning and bylaws, or it could be a third-party background check on the entity as well as the individuals associated with either ownership or control of that license. There are currently 92,240 certified active patients within the medical use of marijuana program. That's a significant uptick, probably year over year. But during the summer months, during the height of certainly the pandemic, when adult use cannabis was deemed non-essential but medical was available, we saw a significant surge in that patient population, really through a number of means, whether it be telehealth at the initial certification stage, as well as the system enhancements we've made over the past year, allowed us to really absorb that surge with ease and make sure those patients were able to be served through the medical use of marijuana program. And to date, there are 247 applications that have been expedited based on a previous policy choice of the Commission. This is different, of course, than prioritization, which occurs based on the statutory requirement of existing medical or the economic empowerment applicants. These are based on license type or their status as a MBE or minority-owned business. So those 247 applications to date have been expedited through that policy choice.
Thank you, Mr. Executive Director. Before you move on to the next slide, any questions for the Executive Director? Okay, go ahead, please.
This next slide is really all applications received by the Commission to date and where they stand as far as their process. You'll see the bulk or the majority of them are 6,026 are incomplete. That means that they just haven't finished submitting all the relevant sections or components of the application to us for consideration. That is really, it's becoming a sizable volume, but it also could indicate that folks are really clicking around the application to see what's required as they go about building out their business and thinking about their business planning. There are currently 200 that are pending. 750 have been withdrawn, meaning they've removed their application from consideration. To date, the Commission has denied 4 applications. We have considered on a staff level, it has been delegated to staff for consideration, a delivery-only pre-certification. That is not a license per se. It really is a sign of momentum. It's a review that occurs based on only statements made to the Commission, so we haven't conducted a full background check or really evaluated much of the SOPs required for full licensure, but it does allow that delivery operator to go forth and hopefully search for either investors or a location. We haven't actually required an HCA or a location for its pre-certification. To date, there's been 54 of those considered by staff, and 728 licenses have been approved by the Commission to date. Again, for a total of 7,762 individual or unique applications.
Okay, thank you. Once again, before we move on to the next slide, any questions for the Executive Director? Okay, go ahead, please, Mr. Executive Director.
This next slide here is a breakdown of those 728 applications and where they fall by license type. You'll see the majority, 298, are that of a marijuana retailer. The next is 220 is that of a marijuana cultivator, and 171 are product manufacturing. That really is the substantive supply chain of cannabis throughout the marketplace. There's a number of other licenses that are unique to Massachusetts, certainly including the craft cooperatives, as well as marijuana micro businesses, which have 17 licenses that haven't been issued to date. And another important element of the supply chain, of course, is the independent testing laboratory. You'll see that there have been 9 licenses issued to date.
Great.
Of those 728, this is an additional breakdown or further breakdown of where they fall in our licensing chain. So provisionally approved means that they have not yet paid their license fee. Provisional license means that they've been approved by the Commission and have in fact paid their license fee. 24 have been issued a final license, and 188 have been approved to commence their operation. The final license to commence operation phase is largely staff driven and is a pretty short turnaround. So I'm confident those 24 will be in that commence operations relatively soon.
Thank you. Keep going.
This next slide here is a bit of our workflow internally. As I indicated at the outset of this presentation, there's 11 that are waiting their staff review. We've reopened and requested additional information from 134 applicants. Important in this context for those more information requested is we don't put a timeline on when an applicant must come back with that information supplied. So that number can hang there a bit, but it's really on the applicant to go forward and gather or collect that information and come back to us. And there's also no limit on how many times we may reopen an application. So it is possible that an applicant could have multiple RFIs sent to them during this process.
But,
As I also indicated, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
I was going to say for the benefit of all that when we review a provisional license application, the staff does note in their summary how many times the application has been reopened.
That's correct. And it usually is not many times. And we also are sure to complete a full review of an application prior to issuing any request for additional information. So it's not as if we stop the review once we find something that might be incomplete. We conduct a full review and provide a complete notice to every applicant as to what might need to be submitted or updated. And then that way they have full information and can return a complete application, hopefully. By and large, it averages 2 or 3 times. It's not a dramatic amount of reopens. As I indicated as well earlier, there's 31 awaiting a third-party response. That's either a municipality, which we do provide 60 days for them to, within the 90 days, of course, a 60-day notice window for that municipality. And on average, the background checks take about 3 weeks or so to come back, depending, of course, on if it's multiple jurisdictions where there might be a license. And obviously with some government offices not being open at this point, there has been a bit of a sluggish response rate, again, based on where locations might be. But again, on average, it's about 21 days or so. And we have seen locally, of course, the access to fingerprinting has been something that during the course of the pandemic has been limited. And I think we've accommodated that by allowing for fingerprints to be conducted prior to a final license, or in the case of laboratory agents, which are required to get fingerprinting as well, that they can seek a waiver from that requirement until such time as the pandemic is over, based on the public health declaration. There's 24 applications before you today for your consideration. And again, as I noted, including delivery pre-certification, there's been 786 applications considered by the Commission.
Thank you. That's a lot of information, Sean. Very useful. Any questions or comments from my fellow commissioners? Commissioner Camargo?
No, I do not. I was just nodding my head like.
Okay, I just saw you turn your camera on, so I thought that maybe you want to make. That's fine. Go ahead, Mr. Executive Director.
Sure, thank you. So the next slide here should be relative to the medical use of marijuana program. And you'll see that there's 986 applications that are in some way, shape, or form. I'm sorry, the next slide is we're on the right one there. Perfect, thanks. This is more of the review process around our applications and their priority, expedited, or general status, excuse me. So you'll see here that 245 applications have used and leveraged the MTC priority. That is, they are existing medical use of marijuana program operators, and a policy that was adopted by the Commission requires that it be tied to their existing operations as well. 53 entities have used and leveraged the economic empowerment certification. 247 have leveraged, as I pointed out at the outset, that expedited review. On the right-hand side, you see that breakdown as to how that's actually been, what that policy entails, which is it could be license type, that of a micro business, outdoor cultivation, craft cooperative, etc. We also expedite social equity participants. We expedite disadvantaged business enterprises, which is minority, women, and veteran-owned. And some entities have actually qualified under 2 different categories. For DBE status, what is unique about that is that you can't secure your DBE status through the Supplier Diversity Office until you're actually a full functioning business. Well, you certainly can't become a full functioning cannabis business unless, of course, you're licensed by the agency. So it's a bit of a chicken or egg situation. We've actually worked collaboratively, and we're grateful for the support of and the collaboration with the Supplier Diversity Office, where we will honor the initial business course having been taken by and through SDO as securing that expedited status. And then so long as that entity continues down the pathway of actually securing their DBE certification. So again, we're really grateful for that collaboration with the SDO. And last here is 441 applicants are general applicants who don't enjoy any either prioritization or expedited review.
Thank you. Keep going.
So this slide here is relative to the medical use of marijuana program. you'll see that there's 156 total applications. The majority of them, 147, have actually expired, and there's 6 or so that are in the final siting profile stage. On the right-hand side, of course, you'll see that there's 54 provisional licenses that have been issued, or in previous terminology was provisional certificates of registration. 10 are in the final certificates of registration. 75 entities have commenced their operations. As a reminder, MTC licenses are vertically integrated. So one license actually permits cultivation, product manufacturing, as well as dispensing. And then 36 have allowed their license to expire for a total of 175 entities, again, vertically integrated.
Thank you, Sean. So before we move on to the next part of your update, are there any questions on any of the licensing data that Sean just went through, or there's a full package of licensing charts that are at the back of the deck that we're using today. But let me ask my fellow commissioners again on any questions or comments for the executive director before we move on. All right. Well, as always, Sean, thank you to you and staff. What you just went through represents an enormous amount of work, and it is with deep gratitude that I recognize all the hard work that goes into this. So thank you. Should we move on to the next topic, please, Mr. Executive Director?
Sure. So the next item is an update on the implementation of the latest round of regulations, which was promulgated by the Secretary of the Commonwealth last week, January 8th. So it is now officially promulgated and therefore effective. And our staff has really begun, we certainly prior to were thinking about what implementation would look like, but we are now in earnest beginning that implementation phase of our regulations. And so there's a number of things that are new additions. There's also a number of things that have been changed. And so it does entail a lot of work on the staff's behalf, as well as a lot of planning as far as sequencing those items. So you have before you a memo from me, but certainly it's a staff-wide and agency-wide effort, which indicates some of the tasks and challenges that are ahead, as well as trying to forecast a bit of timing as well as cost expectations. So we assume that a lot of the work will be hopefully automated. For example, the patient caregiver applications we intend to be online. There's also an expansion of those providers that are able to certify pediatric patients. And we intend for that application, which is now having recently been brought online, to remain in that phase. Our intentions for all of those things to ideally be automated where possible. We also have a lot of work to do with requiring updating some of the bureaucratic items, including forms, guidance documents, and even some of our own internal processes. We've pegged about a cost for software changes alone, which is primarily through the medical use of marijuana programs portal, at about $112,000 or so. And we also suggest or believe that some of the licensing, whether it be agent registrations or patient registrations or caregiver registrations, all of those are accompanied by badges and cards. We think that's going to cost about $15,000 on average. And again, that's based on the cost per card and an estimate of what the volume might be. All in all, we think that overall regulations are going to take about 6 to 8 months for us to fully implement. And so as to not cause alarm, we think, again, things will be sequenced in a progressive order. So longest lead times that we're going to experience, and a lot of our effort is really going to be on the back end of IT support. The adult use changes, we don't think will have many costs, if any, associated with them. That's largely because of the way our contracts are structured. The medical use of marijuana program, including, again, automating those changes to the caregiver-patient ratio, we think is going to cost about the $112,000 or so. The 6 to 8 months to develop, test, and implement these changes is really puts us on track for about an August 2021 for all of our IT changes. Some other updates, including, for instance, changing application forms, are dependent on those IT changes, and we think, again, the implementation process will occur between January and August of 2021. The completion for guidance documents, we also want to be really intentional with our FAQs and bulletins and other things to make sure that we're not just taking dense legal regulations and turning out dense FAQs as well. That essentially defeats the purpose. We want to be, again, intentional about that. We think those are going to really not take that much, certainly not into August, but could take as long as June again, depending on the sequence of what the FAQs or bulletins accompany. And also that's going to be linked somewhat to the software changes. There's some changes to the marijuana transporter license. That's open now. Marijuana delivery and research licenses, there's obviously significant changes there. We think those are going to take us about 5 weeks each to build out. Now that needs to be followed, of course, by testing and a rollout relative to, again, that FAQ process and making that as comprehensive as possible. But the build out itself should be about 5 weeks. There were some changes, and I think there's going to be changes necessary to our social equity programming, and that's including general FAQs and guidance documents. We're planning to roll those out of hopefully about once a month. Now, granted, in keeping in mind, any guidance documents need to be, of course, considered and approved by the Commission. We also think the updates to the overall social equity program should take about 2 months for us to complete. The responsible vendor training program does have some pretty significant changes to it. We've also learned a bit about that program and experienced how we evaluate those applications and committed to making some adjustments there. Those changes are currently underway. We've also met with already through our Director of Research, Dr. Julie Johnson, each of our existing approved vendors to alert them that the regulations have now been promulgated and they have a certain window within which they need to make updates to their training. That is already embedded in the regulations and that part is already underway. Our general counsel is also making, and through her leadership, making some other updates. Again, our suitability review process needs to be updated. We expect that to be done this month. There are certain delegations that are made throughout the document to me, and there's also certain clauses throughout the regulations that read in a form and manner determined by the Commission. My hope is to be able to bring back to the Commission certainly by the February meeting, but that's optimistic on my part, but it is necessary to gather all of those different elements in the regulations. My hope is, again, to bring that back in collaboration with the chair through February. And then again, there's guidance documents that either need to be developed or updated. And those are two different buckets as far as we're concerned. The ones that can be developed, we want to bring those on a rolling basis to the Commission over the next several months. And new guidance documents, we would look to the Commission's leadership to identify where those areas might be necessary. So I realize that's a lot of information, but certainly happy to take any questions you may have.
Yeah, it's not like you have a lot on your plate, Mr. Executive Director. Thank you for that update. Questions for the Executive Director or comments on that? You know, I think that as we go forward, it'll actually have some impact on how these meetings are conducted. Some of the delegation is with respect to license changes, including changes of certain kinds of changes of ownership where less than 10% of the equity is involved, changes of location. So this will be, I believe, the last meeting doing it the old way, where the Commission goes through all those things, and based upon the delegation that we all agreed to in our last set of regulations, we'll have fewer of the changes of location and ownership on the agenda because they will be delegated to staff for approval. I mean, clearly, the Executive Director will give us an update on those actions, but they will not be subject to Commission discussion and vote going forward. Any questions or comments for the Executive Director?
Mr. Chairman, may I just follow up with one item as well?
Please go ahead.
And I'm sorry I neglected to do this. I should represent that I'm here on behalf of the staff, and a lot of the work will obviously be conducted by staff in addition to their day-to-day responsibilities as well. So the reason you may see a lag, and I think an honest assessment of 6 to 8 months, is because I think realistically, that is the balancing all of the work is going to be an element that we need to do in sequencing that work of our IT staff is limited, our legal staff is limited, so that prioritization is also going to lead to that timeline as well. So this is aggressive. But I think it's also an honest assessment of the workload as well. I'm here on behalf of the staff, and it's certainly them that's going to be doing a lot of that legwork.
I appreciate that, Mr. Executive Director, and I certainly understand that, but I also think that you and the staff have been very thoughtful in terms of sequencing and prioritization. So we're not going to have to wait to flip a light switch in August. A lot of stuff will be happening along that 8-month window, so thank you for that. Again, any questions or comments for the Executive Director? Okay, Mr. Executive Director, does that conclude your report? Is there anything else you'd like to cover?
That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Time to move into the licensing part of the agenda. Mr. Potvin, are you there?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning. It's so nice to see you again. I've missed these little interactions. As we said earlier, hopefully we haven't forgotten how to do this. Okay, so the first agenda item are changes of ownership. As I mentioned, we have 12 changes of ownership. We'll go through these individually. So, Mr. Potvin, if you can start, please, with Berkshire Welco LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first licensee that is requesting a change of ownership and control is Berkshire Welco LLC. They're requesting a change of ownership and control over 4 adult use licenses. They're requesting to add 1 individual and 3 entities to have control over the various licenses. As with all change of ownerships and control, background checks were conducted on the individual and the entities associated with it. No suitability issues were discovered. The individual and entities that are requesting ownership and control over these licenses do not appear to have exceeded any ownership or control limits over any particular license type or canopy limit. Additionally, as is usual with any change of ownership that involves some type of conversion of organizational structure or entity change, our commission staff did conduct an organizational and financial inspection into the individual and entities associated with the change, and none of the information found was inconsistent with what was reported to the commission by the licensee. Therefore, staff do recommend review and decision on this request of change of ownership, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there questions for Mr. Potvin, concerns, requests for additional conditions from any of my fellow commissioners? Okay. Then could I please ask for a motion to approve the change of ownership for Berkshire Welco LLC? Can I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. I'm going to start, if it's okay, I'll actually ask individual commissioners to make motions just to make it easier. So, but thank you, Commissioner Stebbins. Can I have a second, please, Commissioner Camargo?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved the change of ownership for Berkshire Welco LLC. Next up is Canna Provisions Incorporated. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here is Canna Provisions. They are requesting a change of ownership and control again over 4 adult use licenses. They're seeking to add 3 individuals with ownership and control over these licenses. Again, there were no entities associated with this change. Again, background checks were conducted and no suitability issues discovered, and there does not appear to be any ownership or control limitation issues associated with this change of ownership. Therefore, staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. Are there any questions or requests for conditions on this motion? Thank you. Then, Commissioner Camargo, could I ask you for a motion to approve the change of ownership for Canna Provisions Incorporated?
So move.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. Let the record show that the commission actually approved the staff record or approved the change of ownership for Canna Provisions Incorporated. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Caregiver Patient Connection LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here is Caregiver Patient Connection LLC. They're seeking a change of ownership and control over 1 adult use license. They're seeking to change the ownership and control associated with this license for 5 individuals and 1 entity. Again, background checks were conducted and no suitability issues were discovered. There appears to be no license or canopy limits associated with this request. Additionally, commission staff did conduct an organizational and financial inspection into the individuals and entity, and none of the information was inconsistent with what was reported to the commission. Therefore, commission staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there questions or concerns or requests for additional conditions? Okay, Thank you. Then Commissioner Stebbins, would you please make a motion to approve the change of ownership for Caregiver Patient Connection LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved the change of ownership for Caregiver Patient Connection LLC. Next up is Coastal Cultivars LLC. Mr. Potvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here is Coastal Cultivars LLC. They're seeking an ownership and control change over one adult use license. They're seeking to add one individual and one entity to the license. Again, background checks were conducted and no suitability issues were discovered. There appears to be no ownership or control limitations identified. Additionally, staff did conduct an organizational financial inspection into the individual and entity proposed. Therefore, staff do recommend review and decision on this request and request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. Are there any questions or requests for additional conditions on this license, on this change of ownership? Okay. Then could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you make a motion, please, to approve the change of ownership for Coastal Cultivars LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approve the change of ownership for Coastal Cultivars LLC. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Eagle Eyes Transport Incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here is Eagle Eyes Transport Incorporated. They are proposing a change of ownership and control over one adult use license. They're requesting 4 individuals and 1 entity be persons or entities with direct or indirect control over this license. Again, background checks were conducted on all the individuals and entity disclosed within the application and no suitability issues were discovered. There's no ownership or control issues that were identified, and additionally, staff did conduct an organizational financial inspection and no inconsistencies were found. Therefore, commission staff do recommend review and decision on this request and request that if you approve it, it be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there questions or comments or concerns on this application for a change of ownership? And could I ask Commissioner Camargo, would you make a motion to approve the change of ownership for Eagle Eyes Transport Incorporated?
So moved.
Thank you. I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the change of ownership for Eagle Eyes Transport Incorporated. Commissioner Camargo, I know you'd like to make a comment. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to acknowledge, I want to ask Kyle. Kyle, is Eagle Eye our first POC transporter license that we just voted on?
Thank you, Commissioner Camargo, and that's an excellent question. It does appear from the change of ownership application that Eagle Eyes Transport would be the first operational transportation license in Massachusetts. That is, the majority of the ownership is held by minority-owned individuals.
Thank you. I think it's a huge milestone for the commission, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Camargo. Mr. Potvin, next up, Herbal Pathways LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here is Herbal Pathways LLC. They're seeking an ownership and control change over one adult use license. They're requesting 3 individuals and 1 entity be added to the license. Again, background checks were conducted and no suitability issues were discovered. There does not appear to be any ownership or control limitation issues. And again, commission staff did conduct an organizational and financial inspection into the parties. Therefore, staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. Are there any questions or concerns or requests for additional conditions on this change of ownership? Then could I ask Commissioner Stebbins, would you make a motion to approve the change of ownership for Herbal Pathways LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved the change of ownership for Herbal Pathways LLC. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Humboldt Masters LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensing here is Humboldt Masters LLC. They're seeking an ownership and control change over 2 adult use licenses. They're requesting 1 individual and 1 entity be associated with these licenses. Again, background checks were conducted and no suitability issues were discovered. There does not appear to be any ownership or control limitation issues. Additionally, staff did conduct an organizational and financial inspection into the parties. Therefore, staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there any questions or concerns or requests for additional conditions on this change of ownership? Then could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you make a motion, please, to approve the change of ownership for Humboldt Masters LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I ask Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the change of ownership for Humboldt Masters LLC. Next up, Mr. Potvin, In Good Health Incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here is In Good Health Incorporated. They're requesting a change of ownership over 3 adult use licenses and 1 medical marijuana treatment center license. They're seeking a change in ownership and control for 2 individuals. There were no entities disclosed in this application. Background checks were conducted and no suitability issues were discovered. Additionally, there's no indication of any ownership or control limitation issues. Therefore, commission staff recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there questions or concerns or requests for additional conditions on this change of ownership? Commissioner Camargo, would you make a motion to approve the change of ownership for In Good Health Incorporated?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the change of ownership for In Good Health Incorporated. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Just Healthy LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here is Just Healthy LLC. They're seeking a change in ownership and control over 3 adult use licenses and again, 1 medical marijuana treatment center license. They're seeking to add 7 individuals and 1 entity to these licenses. Background checks were conducted and no suitability issues were discovered. There does not appear to be any ownership or control limitation issues over these licenses with this proposed change. And additionally, staff did conduct an organizational and financial inspection into the associated parties. Therefore, staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there questions or concerns or requests for additional conditions on this change of ownership? Then could I ask Commissioner Stebbins, would you make a motion, please, to approve the change of ownership?
So moved.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let's record show Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the change of ownership for Just Healthy LLC. Next up, Mr. Potvin, New England Treatment Access LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here is New England Treatment Access LLC. They're requesting a change of ownership and control over their 5 adult use licenses, as well as their 3 medical marijuana treatment center licenses. They're seeking to add 2 individuals with ownership and control over these licenses. No entities were associated with this change request. Background checks were conducted and no suitability issues were discovered. And the individuals that are gaining ownership and control of these licenses do not appear to have any license limitation issues or cannabis issues. Therefore, commission staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there questions or concerns or requests for additional conditions on this change of ownership application? Then could I ask Commissioner Camargo, would you make a motion to approve the change of ownership for New England Treatment Access LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the change of ownership for New England Treatment Access LLC. Excuse me. Next up, can you tell me if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Mr. Potman? Phytotherapy Incorporated?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. Yes, the licensee here is Phytotherapy Incorporated. They currently hold one medical marijuana treatment center license that they're requesting this change in ownership and control. They're requesting that one individual be associated with this license. There were no entities associated with the application for ownership and control. Background checks were conducted on this individual and no suitability issues were discovered. And again, there is no indication that there's any ownership or control limitations with the addition of this individual onto this license. Therefore, commission staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there any questions or concerns or requests for additional conditions on this change of ownership application? Okay, thank you. Then Commissioner Flanagan, would you make a motion, please, to approve the change of ownership for Phytotherapy Incorporated?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the change of ownership for Phytotherapy Incorporated. Last one, Mr. Potvin, or last change of ownership, Sunmass Incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here is Sunmass Incorporated. They're requesting a change in ownership and control over one adult use license. They're requesting the addition of 2 individuals. There were no entities associated with this change. Background checks were conducted on the individuals and no suitability issues were discovered, and there does not appear to be any ownership or control limitation issues associated with this request. Therefore, commission staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there any questions or concerns or requests for additional conditions on this change of ownership application? Okay, thank you. Then could I ask Commissioner Stebbins, would you make a motion, please, to approve the change of ownership of Sunmass Incorporated?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I ask Commissioner Camargo, would you second this motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approve the change of ownership for Sunmass Incorporated. Thank you. Mr. Potvin, at this time, are there any other changes of ownership to be considered by the commission, or are we done?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Then let's keep moving. We have 3 changes of location. Just again to amplify what the executive director said and that I also mentioned, based upon our new regulations going forward, changes of location will be delegated to staff. So this is the last time we'll have this on the agenda. But we have 3 to consider today. So Mr. Potvin, if you would, let's start with Hidden Hemlock LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first licensee requesting a change of location is Hidden Hemlock LLC. Their current location is 370 Wareham Street, located in Middleborough. They are a marijuana micro-business licensee. They're seeking to relocate its operations to 109 Appermont Way, Unit 9 in Westville, Mass. As with all change of location requests, there are fees associated with this. The licensee here has paid the applicable fees. The licensee has also recertified that they have an executed host community agreement with the new municipality. And additionally, with all change of locations, just like with regular applications, when we deem a change of location complete, we do send out a municipal notice to the new municipality or the host municipality. giving them 60 days to respond as to the licensee's compliance with local ordinances or bylaws. In this case, we did the same thing, and we did receive a response from the municipality on November 19th, stating that the licensee was indeed in compliance with all local ordinances or bylaws. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there any questions or concerns or requests for additional conditions before we vote on approving the change of location for Hidden Hemlock? And I think if I'm correct, I think it's your turn, Commissioner Camargo. Would you please make a motion to approve the change of location for Hidden Hemlock LLC?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I'll let the record show the commission unanimously approve the change of location for Hidden Hemlock LLC. Next up, Monroe Associates LLC, doing business as The Vault. Mr. Potvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here who's requesting a change of location is Monroe Associates LLC, doing business as The Vault. Their current location is 342 West Boylston Street, located in Worcester. They're seeking a change of location for their adult use retail license. They're requesting their new location to be 17 East Mountain Street, also in Worcester. Again, the licensee has paid all the applicable fees, and they have recertified that they do have an executed host community agreement with the city of Worcester. We did send a municipal notice to the city of Worcester on October 20th, 2020, giving them 60 days to respond. To date, the commission has not received a response. Therefore, staff do recommend review and decision on this request, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there questions or comments or requests for additional conditions on this change of location application? Great. Then can I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you make a motion to approve the change of location application from Monroe Associates LLC, doing business as The Vault?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved the change of location for Monroe Associates LLC, doing business as The Vault. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Sierra Naturals Incorporated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The licensee here who's requesting a change of location is Sierra Naturals Incorporated. They're currently located at 1001 Massachusetts Avenue in Cambridge. They're seeking a change of location over their medical marijuana treatment center, just their dispensing operation. As the executive director alluded to before, medical marijuana treatment centers are vertically integrated, and with that, one license can have their operations in up to 2 locations. Their dispensing operation, or their dispensary, is currently located in Cambridge, and they're seeking to change that location to 48 North Beacon Street, located in Watertown. Again, the licensee has paid the applicable fees. It's certified that they have an executed host community agreement with the city, and the commission did send out a municipal notice and receive a response on December 4th, 2020, stating that the licensee was indeed in compliance with local ordinances or bylaws. Therefore, staff do recommend review and decision on this request of a change of location, and if approved, request that your approval be subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Are there any questions or comments or requests for additional conditions on this change of location application? Then could I ask Commissioner Stebbins, would you please make a motion to approve the change of location for Sierra Naturals Incorporated?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approve the staff or approve the change of location for Sierra Naturals Incorporated. At this time, Mr. Potvin, are there any other changes of location that the commission needs to consider?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up are renewals, and a couple of comments before we get going here. First of all, as I think I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, if I'm correct, Mr. Poffin, there are 68 renewals on the agenda, including 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 medical.
So that's correct, for a total of 73, Mr. Chairman.
Correct. Okay. We have done this in the past as rosters. Commissioner Flanagan has asked for two conditions on all adult use renewals. Commissioner Flanagan, my understanding is that they are embedded in the staff recommendation. Is that your understanding?
Yes,
So,
Mr. Chairman.
So we don't need to take it up. So I'm going to suggest that we do 2 rosters, then one for the adult use renewals and one for the medical renewals. But before I ask for a motion to approve staff recommendation to issue renewals to the entire roster, does any commissioner wish to take one or more of these entities off of the roster and consider them separately?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Flanagan.
For the benefit of the new commissioners, especially Commissioner Concepcion, who may have not seen the materials, could you just read my conditions?
Sure, absolutely. So these are embedded in the conditions that are recommended by staff, but let me read them as Commissioner Flanagan requested. First commission, and these apply to all adult use renewals. Condition 1 is Commissioner Flanagan moves that within 90 days of the removal of the state of emergency declaration, all adult use licensees must notify the Cannabis Control Commission of updated actions taken on the plans to positively impact disproportionately harmed people. The second condition, again applying to all adult use renewals, Commissioner Flanagan moves that within 90 days of the removal of the state of emergency declaration, all adult use licensees must notify the Cannabis Control Commission of updated actions taken on the diversity plans. So in the recommendation that staff is about to make on this entire roster of adult use renewals, those 2 conditions that Commissioner Flanagan has requested are embedded already in the staff recommendation. Is that correct, Mr. Poffin?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Flanagan, is that okay?
Yes.
Again, let me ask, are there any entities that any commissioner wishes to remove from this roster before we ask for a motion and take a vote? Okay, then I would like to ask, please, then for a motion to approve the staff recommendation on renewals, subject to the conditions recommended by the staff, explicitly including the 2 conditions that Commissioner Flanagan has requested, to approve the staff recommendations on renewals with those conditions for entities A through PPP on the screen in front of you. Can I have such a motion, please, Commissioner Stebbins?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second, Commissioner Camargo, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that the motion was made by Commissioner Stebbins, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approves staff recommendations on renewals for entities A through P on the attached slide. So thank you very much for that. There are 5 medical entities that have staff recommendations for renewals. Are there any questions, concerns, or requests to take one or more of these entities out of the roster for individual consideration? Okay, then let me ask, please, if Commissioner Flanagan would make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendations on renewals for entities QQQ through UUU on this slide.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved staff recommendations to issue renewals to entities QQQ through UUU on this slide. Thank you very much. Are there any other renewals for the commission to consider at this point, Mr. Potvin?
Not at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have final licenses, and if I'm correct, we have 25 final licenses for consideration. Is that correct?
Currently on the roster, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And once again, as we did for renewals, we will consider these as a roster unless there is a request from a commissioner to remove one or more of these entities from the roster and consider them separately. Is there such a request? Okay, then Commissioner Camargo, can I ask you please to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue final licenses to entities A through Y on this and the next slide? And would you make such a motion, please, Commissioner Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue final licenses to entities A through Y on these two slides. Thank you very much, Mr. Hoffman. Are there any other final licenses at this point in time that the commission needs to consider?
Not at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Next up, we have provisional licenses, and again, if my count is correct, there's 24 on the agenda. We're going to do this individually because these are the first time that these applicants and entities are coming before the commission for consideration. So we'll go through them one by one. We will process co-located applications from the same entity. With one overview from Mr. Potvin, but we will take separate votes on each of the entities, each of the license applications. I also have from all of my fellow commissioners requests for additional conditions on these licenses, and I will read those out at the appropriate time, and we will discuss and approve those conditions as appropriate in the vote for each of the applicants. My request, Mr. Potvin, if you're okay with it, and if my fellow commissioners are okay with it, let's get through half of this. So we'll go down the first column all the way to N, and then we'll take a short break, and then we'll get back into the second half. Is that okay with you, Mr. Potvin?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
And my fellow commissioners, is that okay? So that will imply that we'll take a break probably in half hour or plus or minus. Is that all right with anybody, unless anybody requests a break sooner than that? We're okay? The other thing is that there are, for many entities, multiple conditions that have been requested from more than one commissioner, and in some cases there's a little bit of an overlap. So we'll probably have to do a little bit of kind of editing and compromising, but I'm sure we'll get through it fine. So let us get started. The first three applications are from Act Natural LLC. Tier 1 indoor cultivation, product manufacturer, retail. I believe these are all co-located, Mr. Potvin, is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
So if you could give us kind of one summary, but then we'll vote on each of them individually. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Act Natural LLC. Their proposed location is 17-19 Spearhead Drive, located in Nantucket. As you alluded to, they are seeking provisional licenses for Tier 1 cultivation, product manufacturing, and retail operations. As a note, these applications were reopened 2 times for additional information as part of the application process in order to deem them complete. The applicant here does have another current license. They are currently a provisional license holder of a medical marijuana treatment center at the same location. There are 3 individuals associated with this license application. There are no entities associated with this license application. Their priority status that was given to this application, they are a general applicant, which means they got general review in our queuing system. They did supply information that they have an executed host community agreement with Nantucket. They've also conducted a community outreach meeting in June of 2019 and provided all the relevant documentation to support that. The commission did receive a municipal response on December 16, 2020 from Nantucket stating that the applicant was in compliance with local ordinances or bylaws. The applicant did submit a positive impact plan that included at least one goal on the executive summary. Part of the suitability review of this applicant, there were disclosures of past civil or criminal actions and other issues. After a suitability review hearing that was held by the suitability review committee of the commission, the applicants were found to be suitable for licensure. As part of their management and operations review, the applicant did have to submit a proposed timeline and stated that they could be operational within 5 months of receiving these provisional licenses. The applicant did submit their proposed hours of operation for all 3 licenses, which is contained on the executive summary. As part of the substantial review of all license applications, staff did review all the required summaries of plans, policies, and procedures, normally related to security, transportation, inventory, and other operational requirements. These summaries were determined to be substantially compliant with the Commission's regulations. The applicant did submit a diversity plan that had at least 2 goals associated with the inclusion of diverse people inside the marijuana establishment that they're proposing. As they are applying for a cultivation license, they did submit a cultivation plan that demonstrates their ability to comply with the Commission's regulations. As they're also requesting a product manufacturing license, a requirement is that they submit a proposed list of products that they plan on producing. On the executive summary, you'll see there's at least 11 types of products that they plan on producing. And because they are a product manufacturing applicant and also a retail applicant, they also have to submit a plan for how they plan on obtaining marijuana products to how they plan on obtaining marijuana to make marijuana products, and for their retail operations, how they plan on getting those products. And as they are requesting all 3 licenses that are essential within that supply chain, cultivation, product manufacturing, and retail, they are planning on obtaining marijuana from their affiliated licenses. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of 3 provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. So I have from Commissioners Flanagan, Camargo, and Stebbins requested additional conditions on this license application. As I read each of them, I'm going to ask you. It's just not 100% clear. The intention is that these additional conditions apply to all 3 licenses. Is my understanding, but please confirm that. So, Commissioner Flanagan, that is, these conditions do apply to all 3 licenses?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So the requested additional conditions from Commissioner Flanagan, first, resubmit plan to include more than a donation. Second, specify which cohort you are seeking to impact. Third, clarification on how a donation to Cultivate Ed will directly impact specified cohort. Commissioner Camargo has requested the following additional conditions. And again, Commissioner Camargo, these are intended to apply to all 3 of these license applications. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. With respect to the first is to resubmit any local community engagement besides donation. And second, on the diversity plan, to resubmit to include how many employees will be hired. Can they add directly to plan for the first year if a 1-year plan? Commissioner Stebbins. Again, my assumption, Commissioner Stebbins, that this condition would apply to all 3 of these license applications from Act Natural. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. So the requested additional condition from Commissioner Stebbins is prior to final application for licensure, identify how contribution to Cultivate Ed might assist Act Natural LLC's operations on Nantucket. Does that can I ask you and Commissioner Flanagan, because both of you submitted a comparable request for additional conditions? Are there separate issues there? Should we have both conditions, or can we have just one condition that reflects both your requests?
I'm happy to consolidate my suggestion with Commissioner Flanagan's. I think we're both trying to reach the same information.
Yeah, so that seems to be the case. So Commissioner Flanagan's requested condition was clarification on how a donation to Cultivate Ed will directly impact specified cohort. Would you like to add anything to that?
Mr. Chairman, I think that, like Commissioner Stebbins said, we're trying to get to the same issue. One of my issues is that Act Natural hasn't established which cohort they're trying to impact. So I think if we keep the both of them understanding that we're trying to get to the same issue, once we find out which cohort they're trying to impact, that might be more helpful.
Okay, so I'm fine. I'm just trying to make life easier for the staff and for the applicant, but I'm perfectly happy to leave both conditions in place in the vote we're about to take. Commissioner Camargo, any additional comments? I don't see the same kind of other, so my intention would be to ask for a motion that would include both of your additional conditions.
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments, requests, desire for additional conditions besides the ones that I read and that were submitted by each of the three other commissioners? Okay, then could I ask, please, Commissioner Camargo, would you make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Act Natural MCN 281-850, which is Tier 1 indoor cultivation, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioner Stebbins, Flanagan, and Camargo? Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion, please?
No.
Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the issuance of provisional license to Act Natural LLC, MCN 281-850 Tier 1 indoor cultivation, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan, Camargo, and Stebbins. Next, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Act Natural LLC, MPN 281557, product manufacturer, again, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan, Camargo, and Stebbins. Commissioner Stebbins, can I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approved the issuance of provisional license to Act Natural LLC, MPN 281557, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan, Camargo, and Stebbins. Finally, the third Act Natural application, MRN 282038. Can I ask Commissioner Camargo, would you make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan, Camargo, and Stebbins?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Act Natural LLC, MRN 282038, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan, Camargo, and Stebbins. Thank you. Mr. Poppin, next up is Artis LLC, DOA 100113, delivery only, and by definition, this is a social equity participant application. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Artis LLC. They're proposing to do business as Little Dog Delivery. Their proposed address is 29 Harding Street, located in Middleborough. Again, as you stated, they are seeking a delivery-only license. This application was opened 3 times for additional information. The applicant is not an applicant or licensee for any other license type. And as with our delivery-only licensing process, the first step that the executive director alluded to before is the pre-certification process. This applicant was indeed pre-certified by the Commission on July 23rd, 2020, under the specific application number there. And what that essentially says is that the applicant demonstrated a propensity to successfully operate a marijuana establishment at that time, and they were able to use that pre-certification to move forward in the licensing process with local municipalities and capital investors. There are 2 individuals associated with this application. There's no entities associated with this application. Again, also because of the commission's requirements around who can apply for a delivery-only license, majority of ownership has to be held by social equity participants or economic empowerment applicants. One of the individuals, Sebastian Pollock, is indeed a social equity participant, and he does have majority ownership with 91%. The applicant did submit information demonstrating that they have executed a host community agreement with the municipality. Also, information and documentation related to their community outreach meeting. The commission did send a municipal notice and receive a response from the municipality on December 3rd stating that the applicant was in compliance with local ordinances or bylaws. The applicant did submit a positive impact plan that included 3 goals listed on the executive summary for your review. As part of the suitability review, there were disclosures of past acts, but none of these disclosures raised suitability issues. There were no concerns arising from the background checks on any of the individuals or the entity applying for this license. The applicant, as part of the management and operations section of the application, did submit a proposed timeline that states that they could be operational within 2 months of receiving their provisional license. Also, their proposed hours of operation, and for a delivery-only license, there's some limitations over the hours that they can operate within a municipality per the regulations, and these are compliant with those requirements. Again, the applicant did submit all the required summaries of plans, policies, and procedures, and they were determined to be substantially compliant with the commission's regulations. Also, the applicant did submit a diversity plan that included some specific goals about the inclusion of diverse individuals in the establishment, and they do have an additional goal. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the following conditions before you.
Thank you, Mr. Potvin. I have no requests from my fellow commissioners for additional conditions on this license, but are there any comments, questions, or requests for additional conditions on this license application? Then could I ask Commissioner Camargo, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Artis LLC, DOA 100113?
So moved.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second the motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Artis LLC, DOA 100113. Thank you. Next up is Belfleur Holdings LLC, MCN 283095, Tier 11 Indoor Cultivation. This is an expedited application based upon minority ownership status. Mr. Potvin, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Belfleur Holdings LLC. The proposed location is 138 Otis Stage Road, located in Blandford. Again, they are seeking a Tier 11 indoor cultivation license, which allows up to 100,000 square feet of canopy. The applicant is not an applicant or licensee for any other license type. 3 individuals associated with this application and no entities. Again, as you alluded to, Mr. Chairman, this was an application that did receive expedited review based on some certification of their minority business status or process towards that. The applicant did submit information that a host community agreement was executed with the municipality, as well as a community outreach meeting being held. We did receive a municipal response on October 26, 2020, stating that the applicant was in compliance with local ordinances and bylaws. They did submit a positive impact plan, which included 2 goals. There were disclosures of past acts, and none of those disclosures raised any suitability issues, and there were no concerns arising from the background checks that were conducted on the individuals and entity. The applicant did submit a proposed timeline that states that they could be operational within 1 year of receiving their provisional license, and they did submit their proposed hours of operation. All of their summaries of plans, policies, and procedures were submitted, and they were all found to be substantially compliant with the commission's regulations. The applicant submitted a diversity plan, which included 2 goals. Additionally, they did submit a compliant cultivation plan, as they are seeking a cultivation license. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have requests from Commissioners Flanagan and Camargo for additional conditions on this application, starting with Commissioner Flanagan. First, resubmit plan to include more than a donation. Second, specify which cohort you are seeking to impact. Third, clarification on how a donation to New England Veterans Alliance will directly impact the specified cohort. And finally, clarification on how a donation to Massachusetts Recreational Consumer Council will directly impact the specified cohort. From Commissioner Camargo on the positive impact plan, her requested condition is to resubmit to include any local community engagement besides donation. And on the diversity plan, her requested condition is to resubmit to include number of employees to be hired. Can they add directly to plan for the first year if a one-year plan? Are there any other requests for additional conditions or questions on this license application? Then could I please ask for a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Belfleur Holdings LLC MCN 2833095, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan and Camargo. Commissioner Flanagan, would you make such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the issuance of a provisional license to Belfleur Holdings LLC, MCN 2833095, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan and Camargo. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, tell me again if I'm mispronouncing this. Calverty Naturals LLC, MRN 283208, retail. Is that the correct pronunciation? Do you know, Mr. Potvin?
I believe that is correct, Mr. Chairman.
And let me just note that this is also an expedited application based upon status as a woman-owned business.
That's correct.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Calverty Naturals LLC. They're proposing to do business at 219-237 Boston Post Road West, located in Marlborough. It is a retail application that was reopened once for additional information by staff. They have submitted an additional retail application in the location of Belmont. 2 individuals associated with this application and no entities. Again, this application did receive expedited review as the majority ownership is woman-owned. The applicant did submit proof of an executed host community agreement, as well as information and documentation relating to their community outreach meeting. Staff did send a municipal notice to Marlborough on September 24th, 2020, giving them 60 days to respond. To date, the commission has not received a response. The applicant did submit a positive impact plan with 2 goals. As part of the suitability review, the applicant did make disclosures, but none of those disclosures raised any suitability issues, and there were no concerns that arose from their background checks. As part of their management and operations profile review, they did submit a timeline that states that they could be operational within 1 year of receiving their provisional license. Additionally, they did submit their proposed hours of operation. They did submit all of the required summaries of plans, policies, and procedures, and they were all found to be substantially compliant with the commission's regulations. The applicant did submit a diversity plan for the inclusion of diverse individuals in the marijuana establishment. And as they are a retail application, they did submit a plan for obtaining marijuana and marijuana products. And they stated that they plan on negotiating and contracting with other licensed establishments in Massachusetts for the receipt of marijuana and marijuana products to be sold at this establishment once operational. Therefore, staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of any requests for additional conditions on this license application. Are there additional conditions requested or comments on this application?
No.
Okay, thank you. Then could I ask Commissioner Margo, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Calverty Naturals LLC, MRN 203208?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Flanagan.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye. Sorry
Thank
about that.
No problem. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Calverty Naturals LLC, MRN 283208. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Coastal Cultivars LLC, MPN 281764, product manufacturer. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Coastal Cultivars LLC. They're proposing to do business at 0 Patterson Brook Road located in Wareham. Again, they are seeking a product manufacturing license. Their application was opened 3 times for additional information. This applicant does have 2 other applications. One has actually, in fact, been approved by the commission for a provisional license, and that is a Tier 11 outdoor cultivation at I believe, the same location in Wareham. They have also submitted an additional application for a retail operation in Great Barrington. There are 4 individuals and 1 entity, 3 entities associated with this application. This application did receive general review. Again, the applicant submitted proof that they have executed a host community agreement with the town. Additionally, they submitted proof and documentation regarding their community outreach meeting. The commission did receive a response from the municipality on November 10th, stating that the applicant was in compliance with local ordinances or bylaws. As part of their application submission, they did submit a positive impact plan with 3 goals outlined on the executive summary. As part of the suitability review, there were no disclosures of any past acts. They're also, based on the review of their background checks, there were no concerns that arose from them. As part of their management operations profile section of their application, they did submit a proposed timeline that states that they could be operational within 4 months of their receiving their provisional license. They did submit proposed hours of operation. Additionally, they did submit all of the required plans of policies, procedures, and they were all found to be substantially compliant with the commission's regulations. Additionally, they did submit a diversity plan with 2 goals to assist with the inclusion of diverse people in the marijuana establishment that's being proposed. Additionally, they did submit a plan of their products that they plan on producing, and those are outlined in detail on the executive summary, and there's 6 categories of them. Additionally, because they're a product manufacturing licensee or applicant here, they did submit a plan to obtain marijuana from its affiliated licenses. As previously stated, they've been approved for cultivation license and are also applying for a retail license. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am aware of a request from Commissioner Stebbins to add an additional condition to this license. Specifically move $10,000 grant to disabled American vets of Massachusetts to positive impact plan section of the application unless there is direct assistance with hiring. Did I get that correctly, Commissioner Stebbins?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, concerns, or requests for additional conditions on this application? Then could I ask please for a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Coastal Cultivars LLC, MPN 281764, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins. Could I have such a motion, please, Commissioner Flanagan?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins. Would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, please, your vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Coastal Cultivars LLC, MPN 281764, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins. Thank you. Next up is Crabgrass LLC, MCN 281593, Tier 5 indoor cultivation. Am I correct, Mr. Potvin? This is expedited as a woman-owned business. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Crabgrass LLC. They're proposing to do business at 830-894 Main Street, located in Clinton. They are seeking a Tier 5 indoor cultivation license. It does not appear that this applicant is an applicant or licensee for any other license type. 1 individual and no entities are associated with this application. And as you stated, Mr. Chairman, this application did receive expedited review because the majority of its ownership is woman-owned. The applicant did submit proof of an executed host community agreement, as well as all the documentation regarding their community outreach meeting. The commission staff did send municipal notice to Clinton on October 8th, 2020, giving the town 60 days to respond. To date, the commission has not received a response. The applicant did submit a positive impact plan with one goal stated on the executive summary. As part of the suitability review, the applicant did make some disclosures, but none of those disclosures raised any suitability issues, and there were no concerns that came from the review of their background checks. As part of the management and operations profile, they did submit a proposed timeline that states that they could be operational within 6 months of receiving their provisional license. They also did submit their proposed hours of operations, as well as all plans, policies, and procedures that's required for this license type. Those summaries were determined to be substantially compliant with the commission's regulations. Additionally, the applicant did submit a diversity plan for the inclusion of certain categories of individuals in the operation of the marijuana establishment. And as the applicant is applying for a cultivation license, they did submit a cultivation plan that demonstrates their ability to comply with the commission's regulations. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I'm aware of a request from Commissioner Flanagan. Yes, Commissioner Flanagan, to add a condition to this license, and that specifically is to resubmit plan to include more than hiring. Are there any other questions or requests for additional conditions on this license application? Then could I ask Commissioner Camargo, would you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Crabgrass LLC, MCN 281593, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Crabgrass LLC, MCN 281593, Tier 5 cultivation, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Flanagan. Next up, DM Lynn LLC, MRN 283369 retail. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is DM Lynn LLC. They're proposing to do business at 211-217 Lewis Street, located in Lynn. They are seeking a retail license. This application was opened up twice for additional information. This particular applicant does hold 2 provisional licenses, one for a cultivation and one for a product manufacturing, located in Orange, Mass. Additionally, as a note, individuals and entities associated with this application are also associated with an additional retail application under the name TDMA LLC, doing business as DM. One individual and 2 entities are associated with this application that received general review. The applicant did submit proof of a host community agreement, as well as all the documentation for their community outreach meeting. The commission did receive a response from the municipality on August 14th, stating that the applicant was in compliance with all local ordinances or bylaws. As part of their application of intent, they did submit a positive impact plan with 2 goals. As part of the suitability review, there were no disclosures, and there were also no concerns arising from the background checks on the individuals and entities associated with this application. Part of their management and operations profile, they did submit a proposed timeline that states that they could be operational within 6 months of receiving this provisional license, as well as submitting their proposed hours of operation. In addition to that, they did submit all their summaries of plans, policies, and procedures required for this license type, and all of those summaries were determined to be substantially compliant with the commission's regulations. Additionally, the licensee, the applicant here, did submit a diversity plan with 3 goals. And as they are seeking a retail license, they did submit a plan for obtaining marijuana and marijuana products. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I'm aware of requests for additional conditions from Commissioners Camargo and Flanagan. Commissioner Camargo, for the positive impact plan, the request condition is to resubmit to include any local community engagement besides donation. And from Commissioner Flanagan, clarification on how a donation to Cultivate Ed will directly impact residents of Lynn. Are there any other requests for additional conditions on this license, or any questions or concerns? Then Could I ask, please, Commissioner Stebbins, would you make a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to DM Lynn LLC MRN 283-369, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan and Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. I'll let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approves the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to DM Lynn LLC MRN 283-369, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Camargo and Flanagan. Next up is Goodfields Incorporated, MPN 281932, product manufacturer. My understanding, Mr. Poppin, this is an expedited application based upon their minority-owned status. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Goodfields Incorporated. The proposed location is 23 JR Road, Suite 6, located in Medway. They are seeking a product manufacturing license. This application was reopened 2 times for additional information. The applicant is not an applicant or licensee for any other license type. 1 individual and no entities are associated with this application. And as you stated, Mr. Chairman, this application did receive expedited review because the majority ownership is held by minority individuals. The applicant did submit proof of an executed host community agreement, as well as all the required documentation regarding their community outreach meeting. The commission did receive a municipal response on December 14th, stating that the applicant was in compliance with all local ordinances or bylaws. Applicant did submit a positive impact plan with 2 goals. Additionally, the suitability review, there were no disclosures of any past acts. Additionally, there were no concerns that arose from any of the background checks on these individuals or the entity. As part of their management and operations profile, they did submit a proposed plan for when they plan on being operational. They state that they could be operational within 6 months of receiving their provisional license. They also submitted their proposed hours of operation. The applicant did submit all of the required plans, policies, and procedures for this type of application, and all of those summaries were determined to be substantially compliant with the commission's regulations. Additionally, they submitted a diversity plan for the inclusion of certain individuals in the operation of the marijuana establishment. As part of the product manufacturing application, they do have to submit a list of their proposed products, which they have, which is 4 categories listed on the executive summary. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fontman. I am not aware of any requests for additional conditions on this license application. Are there questions or requests for conditions? Then could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Goodfields Incorporated, MPN 281932?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I ask Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Goodfields Incorporated, MPN 281932. Ms. Potter, I think I'm changing my mind. I think let's do one more, and then I know I need a break. I won't speak for you, but I could use a break after this one. So let's do this one. We'll take a short break. So next up, please, Mr. Potvin, JDM Sales Incorporated, MRN 283519. My understanding, this is expedited based upon an expedited application based upon their own status. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, please go ahead, Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is JDM Sales Incorporated. They're proposing to do business at 103 Oxbridge Road, located in Mendon. They are seeking a retail license. This application was reopened once for additional information. The applicant is not an applicant or licensee for any other license type. There's 1 individual and no entities associated with this application. Again, they did receive expedited review because majority ownership is held by minority individuals. Again, the applicant did submit proof of executed host community agreement, as well as all the documentation required to demonstrate that a community outreach meeting was held. The commission did receive a response from the municipality on November 10th stating that the applicant was in compliance with all local ordinances and bylaws. As part of their submission, they did submit a positive impact plan with 2 goals. As part of the suitability review, there were no disclosures regarding past acts, and additionally, there were no suitability issues that arose from the review of the background checks. They did submit a proposed timeline that states that they could be operational within 5 months of receiving their provisional license, and they also did submit their proposed hours of operation. Additionally, they submitted all the required plans, policies, and procedures for this type of application. Those summaries were determined to be substantially compliant with the commission's regulations. Additionally, they did submit a diversity plan, as well as a plan for obtaining marijuana and marijuana products. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have a request for additional condition to be considered by Commissioner Stebbins, which is prior to final application for licensure, identify target organization or educational institution for student internships and confirm students will be above the age of 21. Are there any other concerns or questions or requests for additional conditions on this license application? Then could I ask Commissioner Stebbins, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to JDM Sales Incorporated MRN 283509, subject to additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I ask Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to JDM Sales Incorporated MRN 283519, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins. I have 11:46 on my clock. I would like to suggest that we recess until noon. Is that okay with my fellow commissioners?
Correct. Good.
Okay, we are in recess till noon. Thank you. Okay, it is noon. We are back in session. My intention would be to run through the remainder of the agenda without taking another break, unless it goes longer than I expect. Is that okay with my fellow commissioners? But please feel free, if you'd like a break at any time, just to let me know, and we'll accommodate that. Mr. Potvin, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Mr. Chairman.
That's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. So we are on Lifted Luxury Incorporated. There are 3 applications: MCN 283014, Tier 1 Indoor Cultivation, MPN 281939, Product Manufacturer, and MRN 283558, Retail. These are co-located, if I'm correct, Mr. Potvin. So I ask you to do one summary, and we'll take 3 separate votes. And I also want to note that this is an expedited application based upon their status as a woman-owned business. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Lifted Luxury Incorporated. They're proposing to do business at 10 and 18 Prospect Street in Millville. They are seeking 3 licenses: a Tier 1 Indoor Cultivation license, Product Manufacturing license, and Retail license. These applications were open 3 times for additional information. This applicant is not an applicant or licensee for any other license type. 2 individuals and no additional entities are associated with this application. Again, the applications did receive expedited review as it is a woman-owned business. Proof of an executed host community agreement and a community outreach meeting was submitted. Staff did receive a municipal response on November 28th stating that the applicant was in compliance with all local ordinances and bylaws. They did submit a positive impact plan. Additionally, as part of the suitability review, they did make some disclosures. However, none of those disclosures raised any suitability issues, and there were no concerns that came from the review of their background checks. Additionally, they did submit a proposed timeline as well as their hours of operation, and all applicable summaries of plans, policies, and procedures associated with these license types. All summaries were determined to be substantially compliant with the Commission's regulations. They did submit a diversity plan. As they are applying for a cultivation, product manufacturing, and retail license, they did submit a cultivation plan as well as a list of the products they plan on producing and their plan for obtaining marijuana and marijuana products. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of 3 provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have a request for an additional condition from Commissioner Stebbins. And Commissioner Stebbins, I believe that your intent would be that this would apply to all 3 applications. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. So the condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins is: prior to final application for licensure, identify strategies for promoting the licensee's $5,000 scholarship program. Are there any other questions or concerns with this application or requests for additional conditions? These applications, excuse me. Okay, then let me ask please for a motion, and we're going to do each of these 3 separately, starting with MCN 283014. Could I ask please for a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins? Commissioner Stebbins, could I ask you to make such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, could I ask you to second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission has to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Lifted Luxury Incorporated 283014, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins. Next, could I ask please for a motion to approve the issuance of provisional license to Lifted Luxury Incorporated MPN 281939, again subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, could I ask you to make such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Lifted Luxury Incorporated MPN 281939, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins. Finally, can I ask for a motion, please, to issue a provisional license to Lifted Luxury Incorporated, MRN 283558, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Stebbins, could I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Lifted Luxury Incorporated, MRN 283558, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins. Thank you very much. Mr. Potvin, next up is Local Roots New England. Is it, I guess, NE Incorporated, MRN 283723 Retail. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Local Roots NE Incorporated. They are proposing to do business at 910 Boston Post Road, Suite 100, located in Marlborough. They are seeking a retail license. This application was opened up twice for additional information. While this particular applicant is not an applicant or licensee for any other license type, individuals and the entity associated with this application are also associated with licenses under the name Caregiver Patient Connection LLC. There are 6 individuals in one entity that is associated with this application. This application did receive general review. To note, they did provide proof of an executed host community agreement as well as a community outreach meeting. Staff did send a municipal notice to the town of Marlborough on September 24th, 2020. To date, the commission has not received a response. The applicant did submit a positive impact plan with the 3 goals stated on the executive summary. There were no disclosures of any past civil or criminal actions or any other issues. There were also no concerns or no suitability issues that arose from background checks on these individuals and entities. The applicant did submit a proposed timeline as well as their hours of operation. They did submit all the required summaries of plans, policies, and procedures, and they were all determined to be substantially compliant with the commission's regulations. They did submit a diversity plan with 2 goals that are stated on the executive summary, as well as a plan for obtaining marijuana or marijuana products. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of any additional conditions in this application, but are there questions, concerns, or requests for additional conditions in this application? Okay, then let's see. I think it's your turn, Commissioner Camargo. Could I ask you please then to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Local Roots NE Incorporated, MRN 283723.
So
Thank you very much. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Local Roots NE Incorporated, MRN 283723. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, is Mint Cultivation Facilities LLC, MCN 282951, Tier 3 indoor cultivation. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Mint Cultivation Facilities LLC. They're proposing to do business at 25 Ware Street, located in Palmer. They are seeking a Tier 3 indoor cultivation license. The application was reopened twice for additional information. The applicant here is not an applicant or licensee for any other license type. There's 1 individual and no additional entities associated with this application, and they did receive general review. The applicant did submit proof of an executed host community agreement, as well as documentation regarding their community outreach meeting. Commission staff did send a municipal notice to the town of Palmer on October 1st, 2020. To date, the commission has not received a response. The applicant did submit a positive impact plan with 2 goals stated on the executive summary. There were no disclosures of any past acts. Additionally, there were no concerns or suitability issues that arose from the review of their background checks. The applicant did submit a proposed timeline as well as their proposed hours of operation and all required summaries of plans, policies, and procedures that were determined to be substantially compliant with the commission's regulations. The applicant did submit a diversity plan as well as a cultivation plan that demonstrated their ability to comply with the Commission's regulations. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buffin. I have requests for additional conditions from Commissioners Flanagan, Camargo, and Stebbins. Let me read them. From Commissioner Flanagan, resubmit plan to include more than donations. Second, specify which cohort you are seeking to impact. Third, clarification on how a donation to New England Veterans Alliance will directly impact the specified cohort. Finally, clarification on how a donation to Massachusetts Recreational Consumer Council will directly impact the specified cohort. From Commissioner Camargo, for the positive impact plan, her requested condition is to resubmit to include any local community engagement besides donation. And then from Commissioner Stebbins, prior to final application for licensure, provide background on how support for New England Veterans Association may directly assist veterans residing in Western and Central Massachusetts. Again, even though there's a little bit of an overlap between Commissioner Flanagan's and Commissioner Stebbins' requests, let's just put both conditions in, or at least vote on putting both conditions in place. Are there any other questions, concerns, or requests for additional conditions on this application? Okay, then could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Mint Cultivation Facilities LLC, MCN 282951, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan, Camargo, and Stebbins?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Hoffman, let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Mint Cultivation Facilities LLC, MCN 282951, subject to additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan, Camargo, and Stebbins. Excuse me. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Nature's Remedy of Massachusetts Incorporated, MCN 282668, Tier 6 Indoor Cultivation. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Nature's Remedy of Massachusetts Incorporated. They're proposing to do business at 8 Millennium Drive located in Grafton. They are currently applying for a Tier 6 indoor cultivation license. Their application was reopened once. This applicant is an applicant and licensee for several other license types. Currently, they have 3 retail licenses, 2 of which have commenced operations. They have 1 other cultivation license, cultivation application that's been submitted for Lakeville, and they currently have a product manufacturing license that has commenced operations in Lakeville. There are several individuals and entities associated with this application. It did receive general review. The applicant did submit proof of an executed host community agreement, as well as all the documentation regarding their community outreach meeting. A municipal notice was sent to the town of Grafton on September 24th, 2020. To date, the commission has not received a response. The applicant did submit a positive impact plan with 4 goals stated within their executive summary. As part of their suitability review, there were disclosures of past acts. However, none of those disclosures raised any suitability issues, and there were no concerns that arose from the review of their background checks. As part of their management and operations profile section of their application, they did submit a proposed timeline as well as their proposed hours of operation and all the required summaries of plans, policies, and procedures that were determined to be substantially compliant with the Commission's regulations. The applicant additionally did submit a diversity plan as well as a cultivation plan that demonstrated their ability to comply with the Commission's regulations. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of any additional conditions being requested by my fellow commissioners on this, but are there questions, comments, or additional conditions requested? And could I ask, please, Commissioner Camargo, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Nature's Remedy of, Nature's Remedy of Massachusetts Incorporated, I'm sorry, MCN 282668. Could I have such a motion, please, Commissioner Camargo? Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let's record show Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission unanimously approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Nature's Remedy of Massachusetts Incorporated, MCN 668. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Patriot Care Corp. MRN was a prioritized application based on the applicant status in MTC. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Patriot Care Corp. They're proposing to do business at 21 Milk Street, located in Boston. They are seeking a retail license. As you can see from the executive summary, they currently have 4 other adult use licenses that have commenced operations, as well as 3 medical marijuana treatment center licenses that have all commenced operations. There are several individuals and entities associated with this application. As you stated, they did receive priority review as being an MTC priority applicant. And that's based on the fact that this application that's located in Boston will be co-located with one of their medical marijuana treatment center dispensary locations in Boston. The applicant did submit proof of an executed host community agreement, as well as documentation regarding their community outreach meeting. The commission did receive a response from the municipality on December 8th, stating that the applicant was in compliance with all local ordinances or bylaws. They did submit a positive impact plan with 5 goals that are listed on the executive summary. There were disclosures of past actions. However, none of these disclosures raised any suitability issues, and there were no concerns or suitability issues that arose from the review of their background checks. Additionally, they did submit a proposed timeline for when they plan on being operational, as well as their proposed hours of operation, as well as all required summaries of plans, policies, and procedures for this license type, and all of those summaries were determined to be substantially compliant with the commission's regulations. The applicant did submit a diversity plan, as well as a plan for obtaining marijuana and marijuana products. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have requests for additional conditions from Commissioners Camargo and Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, for the positive impact plan, her requested condition is to provide clarification for the 250 returning citizens training. Will it take place prior to release or after, and if so, where? And from Commissioner Stebbins, several requested conditions. First, prior to final application for licensure, identify organization or school district that will receive $2,500 scholarships. Second, prior to final application for licensure, provide detail and types of 4 events you will support with local organizations and 1 cultural event. And finally, prior to final application for licensure, identify specific veterans organizations and communities they serve. Are there additional questions or comments or concerns or requests for additional conditions on this license application? Commissioner Camargo.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess it's just more of a comment. I know this is a process, and I know they're in this stage of the process, but I would definitely like to see a year from when they get their license and the metrics on the 250 individuals that they will, train. I think the reentry community is key to this industry, and I'm looking forward to their metrics once they get up and running and they hit it. So, thank you.
Sure, thank you. Any other questions or comments or requests for additional conditions? Okay, thank you. Then could I ask please for a motion to approve the staff recommendation for to issue a provisional license to Patriot Care Corp. MRN 281284, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Camargo and Stebbins. Commissioner Stebbins, could I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, could I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Sorry, aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Patriot Care Corp. MRN 281284, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Camargo and Stebbins. Thank you. Mr. Bachman, next up are 2 applications from Regenerative LLC. My understanding is they're co-located. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so if you could give us one summary, and we'll have 2 separate votes starting. So the 2 applications are MCN 283091, which is Tier 2 indoor cultivation, and then MPN 281966, product manufacturing. Mr. Bachman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Regenerative LLC. They're proposing to do business at 30 Noonan Way located in Uxbridge. They are applying for a Tier 2 indoor cultivation license as well as a product manufacturing license. These applications were reopened once for additional information. They currently hold a provisional license in Uxbridge, a Tier 10 outdoor cultivation license that allows up to 90,000 square feet. With the approval of this cultivation license, they will be at their regulatory cap of 100,000 square feet of canopy. There are 3 individuals associated with this application and no additional entities. The applicant did receive general review. As part of the application submission, they did submit proof of an executed host community agreement, as well as the fact that they have conducted a community outreach meeting. The commission did receive a response from the municipality on November 5th, stating that the applicant was in compliance with all local ordinances and bylaws. As part of their submission, they did submit a positive impact plan with the 4 goals stated on the executive summary. As part of the suitability review, they did make disclosures of some past acts. None of those disclosures raised any suitability issues, and there were no concerns that came from the review of their background checks. The applicant did submit a proposed timeline as well as their proposed hours of operation and all of the summaries of their plans, policies, and procedures that were required for this license type, and all of those summaries were determined to be substantially compliant with the Commission's regulations. They did submit a diversity plan as well as a cultivation plan that demonstrated their ability to comply with the Commission's regulations. As they are also applying for a product manufacturing license, they did state 4 types of marijuana products that they plan on producing, also listed on the executive summary. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of 2 provisional licenses subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have a request from Commissioner Stebbins to apply an additional condition, and Commissioner Stebbins, I assume that's for both of these license applications. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. So the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins is prior to final licensure or final application for licensure, identify any company goals for hiring veterans and individuals with disabilities. Are there any other questions, comments, or requests for additional conditions on these 2 license applications? Okay. Then could I ask Commissioner Flanagan, would you please make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Regenerative LLC MCN 2833091, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Regenerative LLC MCN 2833091, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins. Next, could I ask please for a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Regenerative LLC MPN 281966, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Stebbins, could I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Regenerative LLC MPN 281966, subject to the additional condition requested by Commissioner Stebbins. Excuse me. Next up is Terrasol LLC MRN 282202 retail. Mr. Potvin.
Thank you, Mr.
This is an expedited application based upon the applicant status as a social equity program participant. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
The applicant here is Terrasol LLC. They're proposing to do business at 702 North Montello Street, located in Brockton. They are seeking a retail license, of which their application was reopened a few times. The applicant, while it doesn't have any other license, they have been pre-certified for a delivery-only license. There's 1 individual and 2 entities associated with this application, and as you said, Mr. Chairman, they did receive expedited review based on the fact of an individual, Ian Woods, being a social equity participant and having majority ownership, which equated to 60% in this case. So they did enjoy expedited review. Additionally, the applicant did submit proof of an executed host community agreement, as well as all the required documentation regarding their community outreach meeting. We did receive a response from the municipality on November 16th stating that the applicant was in compliance with local ordinances or bylaws. As part of their application submission, they did submit a positive impact plan with 2 goals stated on the executive summary. Additionally, they did, as part of the suitability review, they did make some disclosures of past acts. However, none of those disclosures raised any suitability issues, and there were no concerns that came from the review of their background checks. As part of their management and operations profile section of their application, they did submit a proposed timeline for when they plan on being operational, as well as their proposed hours of operation. In addition to that, they did submit all their required summaries of plans, policies, and procedures for this type of license, and all of those plans, policies, and procedures were determined to be substantially compliant with the Commission's regulations. The applicant did submit a diversity plan with 1 goal, as well as a plan for obtaining marijuana and marijuana products. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have requests for additional conditions from both Commissioner Flanagan and Commissioner Camargo. From Commissioner Flanagan, her requested condition is resubmit plan to include and I think this is right, include more than just hiring.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. And then from Commissioner Camargo, she has 2 conditions. One with respect to the positive impact plan. The requested condition is to resubmit to include more detail on metrics. And for the diversity plan, her requested condition is to resubmit to include metrics or percentage of number of employees to be hired. Are there additional questions or requests for additional conditions on this license application? Then Commissioner Camargo, could I ask you please to make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Terrasol LLC MRN 282-202, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan and Camargo. Would you make such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Camargo made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Terrasol LLC, MRN 282-202, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan and Camargo. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, the Green Harbor Dispensary LLC, MPN 281620, product manufacturer. I believe this was a prioritized application based upon the status of the applicant as an MTC. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is the Green Harbor Dispensary LLC. They're proposing to do business at 29 Abbey Lane located in Middleborough. They are seeking a product manufacturing license, of which their application was reopened once. As the executive summary shows, they have several adult use licenses in the provisional license stage, as well as 2 medical marijuana treatment centers, one as a final license and one as a provisional license. Several individuals and 1 additional entity are associated with this application. And as you stated, they did receive priority review based on the fact that this application or this proposed marijuana establishment will be in fact co-located with the medical marijuana treatment center of the same operation. They did submit proof of the executed host community agreement, as well as documentation regarding their community outreach meeting. Commission staff did receive a response from the municipality on November 12th, stating that the applicant was in compliance with local ordinances or bylaws. They did submit a positive impact plan with 2 stated goals stated on the executive summary. There were no disclosures of any past acts. Additionally, there were no concerns or suitability issues that arose from the review of their background checks. As part of their management and operations profile, they did submit their proposed timeline, as well as their proposed hours of operation, and all their required summaries of plans, policies, and procedures for the operation of the establishment. And all of those summaries were determined to be substantially compliant with the Commission's regulations. The applicant did submit a diversity plan with the stated goal listed on the executive summary, as well as a list of the proposed product types that they plan on producing once licensed. They also submitted a plan for obtaining marijuana and marijuana in this case for a product manufacturer. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of any requests for additional conditions on this license application, but are there questions, comments, or requests for additional conditions? Then could I please ask Commissioner Flanagan for a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to the Green Harbor Dispensary LLC MPN 281620?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I ask Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show the commission unanimously approve the staff recommendation issue a provisional license to the Green Harbor Dispensary LLC MPN 281620. Thank you. Next up, Mr. Potvin, Wellness Connection of Massachusetts Incorporated, MRN 281971. I believe retail. I believe this is also a prioritized application based upon the applicant status as an MTC. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is Wellness Connection of Massachusetts Incorporated. They're proposing to do business as Hightail Cannabis. Their proposed location is 44 Railroad Street, located in Revere. They are seeking a retail license. They do have 2 provisional medical marijuana treatment center licenses. 4 individuals and 2 entities are associated with this application. And as you stated, Mr. Chairman, they did get priority review due to the fact that this application and proposed marijuana establishment will be co-located with the medical marijuana treatment center. The applicant did submit the proof of an executed host community agreement, as well as all documentation regarding their community outreach meeting. Commission staff did receive a response from the municipality on November 2nd, stating that the applicant was in compliance with local ordinances or bylaws. As part of their submission, they did submit a positive impact plan with one stated goal listed on the executive summary. As part of their suitability review, there were no disclosures of any past acts. However, there were no concerns or suitability issues that arose from the review of their background checks. As part of their management and operations profile submission, they did submit a proposed timeline, as well as their proposed hours of operation, and all the required summaries of policies, plans, and procedures that were found to be substantially compliant with the Commission's regulations. They did submit a diversity plan for the inclusion of certain categories of individuals in the operation of the marijuana establishment, as well as a plan for obtaining marijuana and marijuana products. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I have requests from Commissioners Flanagan and Camargo to impose additional conditions on this application. From Commissioner Flanagan, resubmit plan to include more than hiring. And from Commissioner Camargo, for the positive impact plan, her requested condition is resubmit to include more details on any local engagement besides hiring employees from Revere. Are there additional questions, concerns, or requests for additional conditions on this license application? Okay, then can I ask Commissioner Stebbins, would you please make a motion to approve staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Wellness Connection of Massachusetts Incorporated, MRN 281971, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan and Camargo?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, could I ask you to second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to Wellness Connection of Massachusetts Incorporated, MRN 281971, subject to the additional conditions requested by Commissioners Flanagan and Camargo. Next up, Mr. Potvin, You Can Be Co. LLC. I like that name. MPN 281844, product manufacturer. This is an expedited application based upon the applicant status as a women-owned business. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant here is You Can Be Co. LLC. They're proposing to do business at 3065 Cranberry Highway, Unit 11, located in Wareham. They are seeking a product manufacturing license, of which their application was reopened twice for additional information. To our knowledge, the applicant is not an applicant or licensee for any other type of license. 3 individuals and no additional entities are associated with this application. And as you stated, Mr. Chairman, this application did receive expedited review due to the fact of them being a woman-owned business. The applicant did submit proof of an executed host community agreement as well as a community outreach meeting. The commission did receive a response from the municipality on November 10th stating that the applicant was in compliance with all local ordinances or bylaws. As part of their submission, they did submit a positive impact plan with 4 goals stated on the executive summary. As part of their suitability review, there were no relevant disclosures of any past acts. However, there were also no concerns or suitability issues that arose from the review of their background checks. As part of their management and operations profile, they did submit a proposed timeline for operations, as well as a proposed hours of operations, and as well as all required summaries of plans, policies, and procedures, and all of those summaries were determined to be substantially compliant with the Commission's regulations. Additionally, they did submit a diversity plan for the inclusion of certain individuals within the operation of the marijuana establishment, as well as a list of all product types that they plan on producing once operational. Therefore, Commission staff do recommend the issuance of a provisional license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. I am not aware of any requests for additional conditions on this license application, but are there questions, concerns, or requests for conditions? Great. Then Commissioner Flanagan, could I ask you please to make a motion to approve staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to UCann Co. LLC, MPN 281844?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Stebbins. Could I ask you to second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to UCann Co. LLC, MPN 281844. Mr. Potvin, are there other provisional licenses that are on the table for staff review at this point?
No, Mr. Chairman, not at this time, but I would like to thank our entire enforcement team, our investigators, compliance officers, managers, and all of our licensing specialists, as well as our enforcement council team that all play a significant and critical part in getting these licensees or applicants before you for a review and being on the ground doing the work every day. So I want to, again, just congratulate them and acknowledge them for all the hard work that they've been doing.
Thank you. That's very gracious of you, Mr. Potvin, and I certainly share the gratitude towards everybody that you just mentioned. But let me, since you're so modest and humble, let me also thank you directly for your leadership and hard work in pulling us all together. It's greatly appreciated, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item. With commission discussion votes, we have 2 topics here. Is that correct? So if you go back to the previous slide, thank you. First is that based upon our enabling legislation, the commission is required to appoint one of its members as a secretary and another one of its members as commission treasurer. They are 12-month terms. Because of the turnover that we've had in the commission over the last 6 months, we need to appoint a new secretary, a new commission secretary, a new commission treasurer. I am very grateful that Commissioner Stebbins has agreed to step up as the commission secretary, which I think, if I'm correct, Commissioner Stebbins, reprises your role at the Gaming Commission.
Yes, it does.
And thank you. And then I also want to thank Commissioner Camargo, who has graciously agreed to serve as commission treasurer. And while that agreement is great, it needs to be confirmed by a commission vote. So I would like to formally ask if Commissioner Flanagan, would you make a motion appointing Commissioner Stebbins as commission secretary?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, you can abstain if you want to. It's not going to change the outcome, but go ahead.
I'll abstain. Thanks.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the appointment of Commissioner Stebbins as commission secretary by a vote of 3 in favor. Commissioners Camargo, Flanagan, and Hoffman, with Commissioner Stebbins abstaining. Thank you very much, and Godspeed. Next, I would like to ask Commissioner Flanagan if you would make a motion to appoint Commissioner Camargo to the position of Commission Treasurer.
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins, would you second that motion?
Emphatically, yes.
Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Stebbins. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
You know, I said yes to this process, so I guess I'll vote myself in. Yes. Aye.
Okay. It's very gracious of you. Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the appointment of the motion to appoint Commissioner Camargo as Commission Treasurer. Thank you and Godspeed. I appreciate, seriously, both of you. I really appreciate your graciousness and your willingness to serve in these roles, these important roles. So thank you. Next topic is Executive Director goals. And again, this is a little bit, kind of a little bit like the minutes conversation we had earlier. This conversation started prior to Commissioners Camargo and Stebbins joining the commission. We've certainly tried to give context and background to both of them, but it might be a little bit challenging to jump in the middle of this conversation. For context, we have done this once in the past, last year, and I think personally, I believe it's an important part of our process. The way the process has worked is that Executive Director Collins and myself have talked about what should be his primary goals for the fiscal year. There is no implication that these are the only things that that Executive Director Collins is working on. He's got obviously a lot more on his plate, but I believe that it's important that we make sure that there's agreement on what the key goals are for the year. Mr. Collins' commitment is once these goals are approved by the commission, that he will use that as a basis for the performance management system throughout the agency and use these goals to roll out goals for his direct reports and for his direct reports team. So this is an important exercise in terms of setting focus and priority for the entire agency, not just for Mr. Collins. As we did last year, the Executive Director and I met, and I went through a couple of iterations to come up with goals that we were both comfortable with. We presented them to the commission for discussion back, I think, in November, if I'm correct, Mr. Collins. We, based upon that conversation, which unfortunately, again, I know Commissioner Stebbins and Commissioner Camargo were not able to be part of, based upon that conversation in November, we got some feedback and suggestions, which we have gone back and modified the goals to reflect those suggestions and input. And what I'd like to do is have the Executive Director walk through the goals, particularly the changes that were made from the previous iteration that we presented in November, and then ask for a discussion, and if people are comfortable with a vote. If there's more suggested changes or required or requested edits, we'll just go back offline, do it again, and come back next month. But I think it's important that we get this done. But I recognize the fact that we've got two commissioners at least, that this is the first time they're having an opportunity to weigh in on this. And so to the extent that you have thoughts or suggestions about how we might want to modify this, I'm more than welcome them. So,
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Has the Executive Director had his evaluation yet? I know I asked a couple of months ago, and it was supposed to happen.
It's supposed to. This is on me, and I have no excuse other than what's been going on in terms of regulations. It's 98.72% done. I commit to this group to have it done by this week. Right, it should be this coming week, but I have no excuse other than what's been on my plate for not having gotten it done by this point, and I apologize for that. It's not good form on my part.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, these were previously before the commission back, you were correct, in November. There have not been a lot of changes to them. At the same time, I think it's worth discussing them. And I think for context as well, as part of the onboarding process, I did share last year's goals as well as the presentation, which noted or indicated the progress toward achieving them with Commissioners Stebbins and Camargo. So These have been broken up into various buckets, including the first one here, which is commission operations. Is to maintain and improve our existing levels of constituent service and support, and obviously improving it intends to support it with the fiscal year cycle and our budget development process. The second item is a complete rollout of our dynamics system across all departments with 100% staff compliance on data entry. Our dynamic system is really our case management system, where a lot of our licensing, inspections, and other items go into, but that's intended to be an agency-wide, enterprise-wide system, including constituent services, and allow us to triage throughout the entire agency. So that 100% staff compliance of data entry is a critical element of this goal. The third is expanding, data collection and organization throughout the agency and integrate into all aspects of our functions, including policymaking, licensing, enforcement, social equity programming, research, hiring through robust and expanded open data model. This one can really be reduced to continue building out our open data platform and include it across the entire agency in every aspect and function, allowing it to be utilized and leveraged in your process as policymakers, but also how we manage ourselves and improve ourselves during our administrative side of the core functions of the agency. So this one, again, can be really boiled down to prioritize open data as a key element of how we function. The fourth is completing an agency-wide job classification study. This is actually a holdover. In a way, it's not so much a holdover, but a continuation of our work from last year. We did an employee engagement survey. The next step would be to develop a 2-year staffing plan. A key ingredient and element of that, of course, is going to be a job classification study to make sure that we have the right structure in place throughout the agency as we then transition into that 2-year staffing plan to ensure that we build it structurally sound. The next item here, the next bucket, so to speak, would be the legislative mandate in government affairs goals. The first, this is actually it's not plagiarized, the years have been updated, but beyond that, it's the same goal. And I think it's going to be an evergreen goal, is that we will develop, submit, and secure a budget proposal that identifies and meets our mission statement, our strategic goals, as well as our needs of overseeing a safe and equitable industry. And then second to that, and related, is developing and executing a spending plan within those appropriations that ensure we maintain a sufficient and adequate operation. The sixth goal overall is that we continue to anticipate and meet all of our deadlines. That's, again, an evergreen goal, and we'll continue aspiring to do that. And I think we've also have a history of success there. Seventh goal is to continuing to ensure that we meet and exceed our mandates relative to research studies, and we develop mechanisms to share those findings and expanding public awareness with a broad coalition of policymakers, researchers, regulators, the public, as well as, and this is an aspirational item which is important, that we present our research and our findings in as broad a platform as possible, including the potential of research conferences or summits. Here is really just meeting that research goal, but then again, using that research and those findings as certainly for policymakers, yourselves included, but also that we use it to expand public awareness, knowing that at least this fiscal year, that funding has not been made available to us. So let's get creative and make sure that folks are aware of that research. The last goal within this bucket is to develop and deploy a 3-year strategic plan for the social equity program, which includes measurable goals and metrics. Again, that's just a continuation of the social equity program needs a strategic plan, and I think certainly it's incumbent upon the commission to be part of that conversation. We as staff can support that effort, intend to support that effort, but we will bring something to you for your consideration as well. The goal, of course, is that we are meeting the needs of those participants, and that also should include, and not to include, how we conduct outreach to make folks aware of the existence of the program and how it might be helpful to them. And the last 3 goals fall under a human resource and kind of an internal aspect, but certainly the last one here is relevant today, of course. But number 9 is a full rollout of a staff-wide performance management process. This is also a continuation of last year's goal. We do have a performance management structure in place. We are rolling it out right now. The element that I would call your attention to is those cascading goals. So my plan, if these goals meet with your approval, would be to take these to all of our departments and ensure that these are major themes that bleed throughout the agency and are really marbled throughout how we operate across departments and throughout and within departments as well. Number 10 is utilizing the results and findings of our employee engagement survey, which was conducted in the fall, to now implement organizational, structural, and strategic change where it's necessary, and then build upon our staff engagement and prepare to continue monitoring that our progress. The reason I clarify here that change may not be necessary in some instances. I think overall our employee engagement survey was positive. There's certainly some things we can work on, but we found a lot of positive. We got a lot of positive feedback throughout that process, and we want to make sure we continue to harness that and build upon it. So change for the sake of change is not what we're going to pursue. And then lastly is successfully onboarding and fully integrating our new commissioners into our agency, making sure that priorities, programming, and our operations are embedded into that onboarding process so we can facilitate collaboration between and amongst commissioners and staff. Onboarding, I think, is one element. That integration is going to be where we focus to ensure that our new commissioners have access to staff and staff have access to each of you, and that we find a way to collaborate productively. So that is based on feedback of our previous commissioners wanting to really work with and collaborate with our staff throughout the agency. So onboarding is certainly making sure that all the HR elements are satisfied. The integration is going to be an ongoing effort.
Thank you. Mr. Executive Director, just for context, could you, we did iterate this based upon feedback we got in the November meeting. Could you just point out, clearly number 11 was something that we added based upon feedback from the commissioners in November. What other changes were made to this based upon feedback?
That would be it.
That would be it? Okay. Thank you. So again, my apologies to our two new commissioners for kind of, not having you involved in this conversation with obviously not a lot of context. My hope is to get to closure today to the point where we can take a vote and approve this, but I am not going to rush through that. I want to make sure that all of the commissioners, and certainly including our two new ones, but Commissioner Flanagan as well, have an opportunity to weigh in if they have suggestions or any concerns with this, suggested deletions, additions, edits. Can I ask Commissioner Stebbins, Commissioner Camargo, Commissioner Flanagan, any comments or suggested changes to this, or are you comfortable if I ask for a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I've said this before, and I'm just going to reiterate it, not even for the edification of the new commissioners, but because I really feel strongly about this. Item number 8, regarding the social equity program, I have a lot of problems with. First of all, I think that we have a new commissioner who is very interested, one, possibly many more commissioners that are interested in participating in the strategic plan for this program. 2, it continues to bother me when we hear about participant success, because we've yet to determine what success is in this program. I continue to believe that regardless of the number of people that participate, what they do afterwards would constitute success, not just the fact that they're participating in the program, because certainly it's open to people across the state, but I would hate to see 40 to 50 people participate and then do nothing with it. That I think making this one of the actual goals for our executive director, given the fact that the accolades we heard today, like, the amazing work that he has done and the staff has done, or that he has a lot on his plate and the such, this really shouldn't be a goal. This is sort of the backbone of the commission. Equity is this commission. It's in our mission statement. It's everything that we've been working towards. Delivery came from trying to work towards equity, the multiple types of licenses we have tried to work through equity. I really think that this needs to be removed for the next year to allow the commissioners to have input and an impact on that. And maybe once commissioners have had a chance to do that, it becomes one of our executive director's goals. It's true the executive director is a more permanent job than the commissioners are. We all term out at some point, so we're borrowing the agency. We're not here for the duration. But I really feel as though, and a couple meetings ago, it was suggested that I work with Sean on what the strategy is, or that some of the commissioners work with Sean to have this as an actual goal where he's going to be hopefully evaluated and he's going to have to come back and report to us what he has or has not been able to accomplish. Given the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic where staff will not be in the office at least until July, I just think doesn't give us enough leeway to work on this. And I think if we're going to be genuine in our attempt to really make this a top-notch program, then we need a year to work on it. We need some time to work on it. And I know you and I disagree that you think having this as a goal for him is just something that puts it on the radar. I argue the fact that there's a lot of things on Sean's radar that aren't on this list. And so I think that we need to give some time, given the transition in commissioners and given the transition in the program. We're looking for a new director, so we still have that going on. We don't even have the staff in place to do this, that it should be put off for a year and then it should be reevaluated.
So thank you, Commissioner Flanagan. I appreciate the way you laid that out because I think you're right. I think we all share the same objectives here. I think we do disagree on whether this should be included or not. I think it's really important, and some of the things that you said, for instance, this issue about how to define success. We can't do that now. We don't know how to do that now, and to me, that's one of the critical things that would come out of this process. So I do think we're sharing the same objectives. I'm not sure I can kind of strongly make my point, but I actually do think that 6 months, which is kind of what's left in this fiscal year, 5.5 months, with the new commissioners on board, including Commissioner Concepcion, who will start being onboarded on Tuesday, I hope. I do think that does give us enough time. I think this is an issue that has been lingering over the commission for a long time. I think I'm not feeling too guilty about not having addressed it up to this point, given the points you made about working remotely due to the pandemic, being shorthanded in terms of commissioners. I'm not apologizing for not having it done to this point, but I do think this is a pretty high priority, urgent issue, and I don't put this on, or at least my opinion, this should be included, is not about signaling. It certainly includes signaling, but it's about, I think we need to get this done, and I think it's overdue. I think we now have a full complement of commissioners, and I do personally believe that with the full complement of commissioners and their collaboration with Sean and staff, it is quite doable and important to do over the next, 5.5 months. So just an opinion. I'm not trying to, say that you're wrong. I'm saying I have a different perspective on it. I don't think we're disagreeing on, it sounds like anything other than kind of timing. But I do think.
No, and I.
Go ahead.
But I argue the fact that we've had a complement of commissioners and we have had 3 years and we've had people in those positions. And so for me, because we've had a transition, because we have new commissioners that have been onboarded who have a different perspective and a new perspective, that I think this is a transition time where it shouldn't be that we're going to be here a year from now asking Sean to tell us what he's accomplished on it when it could be ours to do for a while, and then next year come back and say, okay, here's our 3-year strategic plan, you need to implement it. I mean, it's no different than him having to, he has to strategically do everything for this agency. And I think that he has done that, given the vaping crisis, the quarantine, the pandemic, the moving the staff out of the office. I mean, there's a lot of big things that have happened and we've functioned quite well. And I have to give credit to the staff and the executive director for that. But I really think that there needs to be a deep dive into this program to then measure success. And I don't think it yet should be on his level. I think it should be on a commissioner level.
Respectfully, I agree with pretty much everything you said, other than the commission can't do it without staff. We can certainly play an active role, and I certainly intend to play an active role. I'm sure other commissioners do as well. Given the open meeting law, we have to do this through Sean and the staff. The implication here certainly isn't, Sean, go away, do this, and come back and tell us what the answer is. The implication is for Sean to, because of the open meeting law, because of the way we have to function, organize a process that absolutely will have inclusion and leadership from those commissioners that wish to be involved. But it can't happen just by the commissioners by themselves, just given the nature of the open meeting law. It just can't. So Commissioner Camargo, please go ahead.
Yeah, just thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner Flanagan, for bringing up the topic. I guess just two newbie practical questions. One is, if we take it off this plan, where does it go? And I hear what Commissioner Flanagan says. It's a huge priority for this commission. And having started a nonprofit organization, I know it takes more than 3 years to figure it out, get it right, mess it up, and try again. Not including funding and proper staff. So I guess that's my question. One is, if we take it off of here, where does it go? And then two is, I guess, like the applications, are there conditions if we leave it on here? You know, I think that to say that this will get accomplished in a year, I think is, I don't know how realistic that is. I know we need to hire a director. That's going to take a few months. So I guess those are my two questions.
So let me take, thank you, Commissioner Camargo, and please, anybody else that wants to respond in kind to Commissioner Camargo's questions. If it gets taken off, it doesn't stop being important, but it does not stay as something that we kind of are mutually committed to one another to get done in the next 6 months. And while I certainly agree, I have a fair amount of startup experience as well. It takes a while, and you never get it right. It does not take 3 years to develop a plan. What it takes is you develop a plan, you execute against it, you see where it's working, where it's not working, you make adjustments. It never turns out to look like the original plan, but the value and benefit of planning is incredibly important, even if it's going to take several years for you to get there, and where you're going to get to is going to look totally different. And so I strongly believe that this is imperative for the commission. I strongly believe that, as I said, the commission by itself can't do this without Sean's involvement and the staff's involvement and Sean's leadership. And I personally believe that, if we have 5.5 months left in this fiscal year, I personally believe that is sufficient time. If people want to push back and say it's not, I'm certainly open to that point of view. My personal opinion is that it's sufficient time. And I will also say, I think that we should have been doing this. This should have been done before. I'm not apologizing for it. As I said, we've had a lot on our plate. We've had a shortage of commissioners. We went through a pretty, brutal, necessary regulatory process that consumed a substantial amount of our resources for the past year. And as Commissioner Flanagan pointed out, we had to on the fly adapt to working remotely. I've done a lot of stuff, and so I'm not apologizing for not having it done. But I just think this is overdue and imperative. And again, my implication is not we're going to have the plan executed in a year, but we got to have a plan in place so we can have an informed conversation about how we're doing versus the targets and the metrics that we collectively agree are important. And if we're not attaining those targets or metrics, what are we going to do differently? That to me is the point of plan. The point of plan is not to have a piece of paper that sits on the shelf, or that's my old school. I'm sorry, that sits in email.
Right.
The point is to have it as a living document and use it so that you can see how are we doing, and if we're falling short, what do we need to rethink and do differently? And I just think it's absolutely imperative to do that. So it's not going to go away as an important topic. Certainly social equity will always be an important topic, but if we take, in my opinion, if we take it off this list, we're going to have the conversation a year from now, and we're still not going to have a plan in place. And so I just think it's important to say, collectively, we believe we have to have a plan, strategic plan in place for the social equity program. That's I think that's imperative, and again, I'm repeating myself, but I believe it's overdue.
Chairman, if I may.
Please go ahead, Commissioner Camargo.
Yeah, I guess my question is, and Sean, thank you for having obviously walked us through this before in terms of your goals from last year, which you were able to accomplish. Is there, again, I'm now thinking like the applications, right? But the conditions. I hear your argument, Chairman, in terms of leaving it on. I don't think that with your new commissioners or prior commissioners, this is going to fall anywhere. I think that all of us are committed to the social equity program and seeing it through. But I guess my question is, what's the timeline? Because you have to get the whole commission involved. It has to be part of the culture, the mentality of creating this, and staff. Plus, there isn't a director of the program just yet. So I guess, can we I don't know if we come back and discuss this one point, But there should, I would like to see a timeline for it, because I think that'll give us the realistic sort of view of what it'll take and how long it'll take. But I don't know if in having to hire a director on top of all the work that the commission already has, I don't know if we can accomplish everything in the next 11 or 12 months. But to your point, planning is important, and going through the planning phase for the next few months is key and huge.
Right. I guess I'd like to hear Commissioner or Executive Director Collins' thoughts about that. But I do want to point out we do have an acting director of community outreach. We have a search for a full-time director, but we do have an acting director. So it's not like
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Collins, do you have any response to Commissioner Camargo's question about timeline?
Sure, I can certainly try. I think, as I mentioned earlier in presenting the discussion around, or the plan around implementation of the new regulations, there's a lot of work to go into that over the next 6 to 8 months. And I think we need to be mindful of that as well. And so I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver at all. This is going to take some time. And I think the reason it's going to take some time is it's never been done before. There is actually, I think to Commissioner Flanagan's point, success is not a clear, there's no clear answer to it. And I think evidence of that, of course, is the commission has discussed this at recent commission meetings and tried to establish what goals and metrics would be. And I think had a really lively and robust discussion, but didn't get to closure. So I think my intention with this as a goal would be to try to work between and amongst commissioners and see if there is common themes in closure. But to say I could do that in 6 months, I don't think is realistic, to be honest, just because of all the other work I indicated needs to happen across regulatory implementation. I do think we are staffing up on that side of the house, so to speak, but this needs to be certainly a collaborative effort throughout the agency. And one of the things we've also been working really hard to do is think about equity bigger than just the social equity program. And that includes really bringing in each and every department of our agency. So this would not fall on one individual or one department alone, including, for instance, as we set goals for each of our staff and each of our departments this year, and I mentioned performance management, every department was tasked with developing an equity-based goal. Certainly the folks in the social equity program and now falling under the leadership of our chief communications officer, I would look to them primarily here, but I wouldn't look to them exclusively for this. So I think to directly answer your question, I don't think by the end of the year I'd like to, it would still be a priority, but I think it would be I'd be overextending myself to do that, and something would have to fall, whether it be the implementation of the regulations or this. And we would work earnestly, but I think to be realistic, it would take the better part of a full calendar year to achieve.
Commissioner Stebbins, I know you wanted to say something.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the executive director's comments, as well as my colleagues. Yeah, I think what jumped off the page for me looking at goal number 4 and understanding that we're just over halfway through the fiscal year, which would be evaluating the executive director. I wonder if it couldn't be a simple modification to goal number 4, which is to begin to develop a 3-year strategic plan and remove the words "and deploy."
Matt, I think he's referring to number 8. So please go back to the. Yeah, thank you. Sorry for the interruption, Commissioner.
No problem, Mr. Chair. Just the develop and deploy. I think it's the "and deploy" language is a little difficult for me. Again, realizing we're over halfway through the fiscal year and understanding the executive director's concerns, as well as the ongoing efforts to fill a key staff person with the position. So I wouldn't want to necessarily take it off as a goal, but I would suggest perhaps rewording it that gives the executive director a little more flexibility and doesn't hold him to a deployment of a plan by the end of the fiscal year.
So thank you for that. Could I just ask for a question of clarification? are you suggesting literally just saying develop and take out the words and deploy, or do you have other suggested changes to that language?
I would say begin to develop a 3-year strategic plan and remove the word and deploy.
Yeah.
I certainly appreciate the executive director's comments about understanding the need to engage staff, understanding the need to engage commissioners. I think that's all built into it. But to give him a little breathing room and to make sure we do it right, I think some more flexible language would help.
Okay. Thank you. I obviously want to hear from my fellow commissioners, but Mr. Collins, what are your thoughts about what Commissioner Stebbins just suggested?
I appreciate the comments, and I think, not to wordsmith too much here, but it also, if it made the commission more comfortable, I think we could also incorporate in collaboration with the commission, begin to develop, which I think calls out, and I candidly gives the commission some skin in the game for me, knowing that I'm going to be held accountable for it ultimately. I know I need your partnership for my success.
I think that's a great suggestion and a great modification, Mr. Collins. Commissioners Camargo or Flanagan, any comments on if you kind of combine the suggestions of Commissioner Stebbins and Executive Director Collins? Any comments on how that feels to you? Is something you support or not? Commissioner Camargo?
I don't like setting people up for failure. Not that this is, but I think, I don't know how you word it, you know, but I think the timeline needs to be stretched out a little bit. I think this is going to go, I think we're going to start it, and I think the collaborative language needs to be in there. But I don't want to come back a year from now and say, oh, we didn't, you know, he didn't reach his goal, because I think this is going to take a little bit of time. So I could be wrong, but I think adding some of that.
Well, I think what Commissioner Stebbins said, if I heard him correctly, is his recommendation that we put in the language begin to develop, which to me is that strikes me as reasonable. It doesn't put the executive director under, you know, it's got to be done by a certain date. It's just
okay.
That starts the process. So I'm just speaking for myself, obviously, but for me that does address. I hope it addresses the concern you just raised, because I too don't want this to be, you know, Sean being set up for failure, obviously. And I do, to Sean's point, absolutely believe the commissioner should have skin in the game as well, and you know, feel equally accountable as Sean on this, on all things, but particularly on this topic.
Thank you, Chairman.
Any other we can do one of two things, and I'm open-minded. Again, recognizing that Commissioner Stebbins and Camargo are kind of diving into this for the first time. We can take the language suggested by both Commissioner Stebbins and Executive Director Collins, work on them offline, bring them back for our February meeting for a final discussion and vote, which gives people, I think, a little more time probably to delve into it. I don't think anything's going to be lost. I mean, we're going to, you know, the work of the commission will continue for the next month, but I think if we actually work on the language based upon the recommendations of Commissioner Stebbins and our executive director, and bring it back on the table in our February meeting, the additional benefit, of course, it gives Commissioner Concepcion a chance to participate in the conversation as well, which I think would be really valuable. So unless there is a pushback, my recommendation is that we work on modifying this particularly number 8 based upon the input we've got today, and bring it back for consideration for the commission in our February meeting. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Let's keep going back to the agenda if we could. As I mentioned earlier, before we get here on that, there's a topic that I was not aware of at the time that we posted this this agenda to the public on Tuesday. We had an application that was not posted as part of the agenda, a license application that was not posted as part of the agenda. The materials were ready, and we should have had it included in the agenda that was posted to the public, and that's our oversight, and I take accountability for that on the behalf of the commission. It's our oversight. Delaying our consideration of this license application until our next meeting in February, I believe would cause substantial financial hardship for the applicant, and I think is unfair when it's on us. I am asking for the indulgence of my fellow commissioners to put this on the agenda without going through the normal process of taking a week or so to ensure that people have that commissioners have time to digest the materials. The materials were circulated for this application last evening. I hope that my fellow commissioners had a chance to look through it, but I would like to ask for the indulgence of my commissioners to put this application on our agenda right now to discuss and vote on. I think that's the fairest outcome. I think that's what we should do, but this is obviously a little bit out of the ordinary. So before I start getting into the conversation, I'm sure my fellow commissioners are comfortable with indulging me on this. So could I have any questions or concerns before we get into the specific application, or my fellow commissioners comfortable with going ahead? Thank you, Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Stebbins, thank you. Commissioner Flanagan, you okay with doing this?
I'm good.
Okay, thank you very much. Then, Mr. Potvin, you thought you were off the hook, but I guess you're not. So
That's okay, Mr. Chairman. I'm here.
Okay, so if you could, would you go through your review and recommendation for this application for commission discussion and vote?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And by the way, I just want to thank both Sean. This was a lot of work done very quickly to get to the point where we did have a summary and all the background materials to review today at the meeting, and that took a lot of work done on Sean, not only on Sean's part, but Kyle and the entire enforcement team. So thank you very much for doing that. I think we are doing the right thing here, but I know it took a pretty Herculean effort, to get it on in the last 24 hours. So thank you very much for that.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to you and the commissioners, the executive director, and the chief of investigations and enforcement for indulging us on this. And with that, I will go right into it. It is a final license proposal for a provisional licensee named New Dia. So it is a final license recommendation for your consideration. The licensee here is New Dia LLC. Their location is 118 Cambridge Street in Worcester. They are seeking a final license for retail operations, and the licensee is not an applicant or licensee for any other license type. Some overview of some things that have occurred over the licensing process. The commission did approve them for a provisional license on January 16th of 2020. All applicable license fees have been paid. There have been no organizational changes of the license since the licensee was issued a provisional license, and no new suitability issues have come about from since the issuance of the provisional license. The licensee's facility was inspected on December 18th of 2020. No evidence was discovered during the inspections that indicated that the marijuana establishment was not in compliance with the commission's regulations or local ordinances or bylaws. During the inspection conducted by commission staff, our investigators and compliance officers, certain areas were reviewed and ensured for compliance regarding our security requirements, the commission security requirements, inventory and storage requirements, their retail operation, and at this time they will not be performing any transportation activities and will rely on other licensees to assist them with the transportation of marijuana and marijuana products. Therefore, commission staff do recommend the issuance of a final license subject to the conditions before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Potvin. Again, my appreciation to you and staff for pulling things together so quickly. Because this is something that came up, without the normal lead time in terms of distributing materials to commissioners, I'm more than open to having as much conversation as we need to in terms of any questions that you have for Kyle or the staff or any concerns. Are there any questions and concerns before I ask for a motion? Great. Okay. Then Commissioner Stebbins, can I ask please for a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue final license?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Camargo, could I ask you to second that motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Stebbins made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approve the staff recommendation. That's it. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, just two things. One, I wanted to extend my appreciation to Matt Giancola for coordinating the meeting and all of this logistics. Matt did a wonderful job, so thank you very much for that. You know, you want to put yourself on camera so everybody can see you and wave to you, or not? Your choice. But thank you, seriously, Matt. There we go. Hey, thank you, Matt. Really appreciate it. You did a great job, so thank you for that. Let's go to the next slide. So our next meeting, our next public meeting is February 11th via Microsoft Teams. It will be remotely again. It'll be at 10 a.m. That is locked in, but for the benefit of the public, I wanted to put on the next slide, which is this is our current schedule for public meetings for the rest of the year, the rest of the calendar year. Please note that it is subject to change, but just for planning purposes, I just wanted to get these dates out to people, and certainly if any of these dates have to change for whatever reason, we'll communicate quickly and broadly if that happens. There being no further business before the commission, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Flanagan, would you like to make such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Could I have a second, please, Commissioner Camargo?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to adjourn, seconded by Commissioner Camargo. Commissioner Camargo, your vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Stebbins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hoffman, I let the record show the commission unanimously voted to adjourn at 1:20 p.m. on the 14th of January 2021. Thank you very much, everybody, and please be safe.
Thank you.